If everything's working properly, we should be set up and we are live currently. I'm talking with Sully Cortez about the GH5. We are going to be monitoring chat to the best of our ability. So if you have questions, feel free to leave them there. Got to mute myself over here so I don't drown myself out. But Sully, man, how's it going?
It's going good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about the GH5, and appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to you on your channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you buy a GH5?
I did actually, yes. I was hesitant on whether or not I thought it would be a sufficient enough upgrade from the current GH4, but you know, I went ahead and pre-ordered it and made the leap of faith, so to speak.
What was the factor that kind of sold you on it?
There's a multitude of things personally that I liked about it. For one, like one of the things that I really like about it is that when it comes to getting the best image quality possible, especially in terms of like post, having 422 10-bit inside a body, I think is amazing. And using an external recorder constantly on a lot of the projects that I've done on the GH4 can be cumbersome, and it was kind of a hassle to have that. And I personally am one that likes to do a lot of post editing. Certain projects I like to just get things out really quickly, but other projects I like to take my time and actually make it look the best that it possibly can. So having that inside the camera, I think, is really good. Now, whether or not it's beneficial as far as the data capture rate, that remains to be seen. We'll have to do some further testing on that, but that was definitely one thing that I really liked about it.
How have the files been playing? Because I've seen some people online kind of having issues with the actual editing. Obviously, when any new camera comes out, there's little quirks in the codec. You know, often when a new photo camera comes out, Lightroom and Photoshop all get updates. So are you editing with Premiere, and are the files working well?
I'm actually editing with Final Cut, and as far as like all across the board, all frame rates, all data rates, everything has been working flawlessly. I am using the 2016 latest MacBook Pro. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I have brought some of the files into Premiere, and I haven't had a problem with it. So, and I have heard of people having problems with it, not playing, they have to transcode it, and a whole bunch of other things. But as far as I'm concerned, I haven't had any issues.
Well, for me, I didn't order it. I have a GH5 right here. But this is a rental from Lens Rentals. I didn't pre-order it because I'm not a pre-order kind of guy. I don't like to give companies my money before I know what they're going to give me. And I think there may be a lot of people in that boat who are kind of maybe now. I think we got to talk about the autofocus, because I think this is something that, for whatever reason, has sparked a little storm on the internet about the GH5 autofocus, and if it's good or if it's bad. And people, you know, oh, I should have never pre-ordered it, this is garbage or whatever. That's why I like to rent it and test it myself. It was like, I think $100 to rent, so kind of a small investment in terms of making a decision for a $2,000 camera. But you know, I totally get why you bought one, because I've been shooting the past 3 years on the GH4 and I've loved it. And so if the GH5 is only an upgrade from there, it does make sense. But I still am like kind of cautious because I'm always worried about new technology. Call me paranoid. But we got to talk about the autofocus, because I don't know, you were in the chat this morning. We were watching Max and Photo Joseph kind of make amends. What's been your experience with the autofocus?
So my experience I don't know if anyone watching or on the replay has seen my latest video that I put up, but I did get some flack for that because of the white backdrop, the seamless. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I only have two lenses for my GH5 and GH4 that are native. I personally like to shoot with adapted glass, whether that's using the Metabones or other adapters, including PL adapters for certain lenses. But the native lenses that I have are the 15mm 1.7 Leica and the 14 to 45 version 2 3.5 to 5.6. And that's an older lens. It's not, you know, it's not the best lens. It's not the sharpest lens, and certainly not, as far as autofocus is concerned, the fastest lens. But my experience with it is with that lens, it's been really shady, and and I gotta say that in all honesty, because like we saw today, you don't want to like hide the truth, and you really want to try to be as truthful as possible, especially when talking about new products that are coming out and letting people know about these products. And I was listening to your live stream earlier, and you were talking about how when new technology comes out, it's like you really try to gotta like put aside any and anything that you may have heard or anything that you may think about it. You actually have to do your own testing, and you have to really try to find out what works for you. And yeah, personally, I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's on, and sometimes it just does whatever it wants, and you have like no control over it. So we'll have to see in the future if that is something that has to do with firmware. But I don't know. What have you been seeing lately on it?
So I just got the rental yesterday, and I started playing around with it, obviously going through the menus, checking out all the features. And then I wanted to start playing around with the autofocus because I do a lot of vlogging, and I use my GH4 for pretty much all of my YouTube content. Sometimes I'll use a GoPro, or right now, using a webcam, but almost 90% of it, I'd say, is shot on the GH4. And it's been unfortunate that the autofocus on the GH4 was so bad. So I was really looking forward to the GH5 being better. And even if it was, a small improvement, at least that'd be like something. But I was doing some tests last night, and I was just doing the typical, like, kind of hold the camera up like you're going to do a vlog or something. And I'm setting it to face detect. And I see that the software is seeing my face. It's tracking my eyes, but the lens itself like wasn't actually focusing. And I don't know if it was because it was kind of dark in here, or if maybe this lens, there's something wrong with it. But then like it would just start working for a little bit. And I was going through the menus, trying to play with the sensitivity settings and the speed settings, trying to get that kind of all dialed in. And then there's, you can turn constant autofocus on or something in one of the menus. And then there's also like quick autofocus in another one of the parts of the menu. So they've got kind of all these different autofocus options split in the menu system. And so there's even like a sub menu where there's more auto-focusing kind of stuff, and it's really hard to determine kind of what's affecting what, and basically I found it to just be really unreliable, because it would be working and it'd be working great, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, this is perfect, exactly what I need, and then would just stop. And I didn't change anything, I didn't do anything different. And then today I was doing it kind of like a better lit environment, and I was doing it both. So I've got the 12 to 35 2.8, the native Lumix lens on here. And then I've also got a Metabone speed booster. And so I was kind of testing that as well, because what's cool about that is I've got the Canon 50 1.2, and that has, the little window where you can see where you're focusing. And with the Metabone specifically, I think it's doing the same thing with the Lumix glass, but it's doing that like micro hunting.
It like racks back and forth slightly. Yeah.
Right. Where it's just wiggling, trying to see where you're in frame. And it's like these micro adjustments. And that's really obnoxious to look at in a final video. Like if it was something professional, like a wedding or a short film or music video, you wouldn't want your focus constantly just like wiggling on this tiny little plane. You'd want it to kind of sit and lock and rest. And then if there was a significant change, move. And that's what I was hoping all those sensitivity and speed settings were for, but I can't even really get it to work reliably. It seems like sometimes it just doesn't want to. And then from what Photo Joseph and Max were talking about was that, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, is that the autofocus is worse when you're recording. Yeah,
that's in my experience so far, that is definitely true. If you just leave, and especially when you're like trying to do it vlog style, and you're holding it out, and you have like face tracking, for instance, on, and you flip the screen towards you, you can see it locks on really, really good, and it'll stay locked on. Like the little marker that tells you where the autofocus points are going. It does a really, really good job, but the moment you hit the record button, it's like the lens just can't keep up with what the autofocus system is trying to tell it to do.
Yeah, and what's weird for me is I've almost had the opposite where like when I'm in preview mode, I'm not recording, I'm just getting things set up. Like it'll be tracking, but it won't actually be live adjusting. Like it won't. And I
Hmm.
had a similar issue on the GH4 where I would have to start recording to kind of tell the camera like, "Hey, I want you to start autofocusing," and then it would do it. And I feel like it's a menu setting somewhere that I just need to kind of update, but I don't, for the life of me, don't know where it's at. And there's so many different people out there with so many different lenses, so many different cameras. So I definitely have to do more testing before I make any final judgment. But the one thing I would say is that it doesn't seem, when it is working, it still is not to the point where I would probably want to use it on anything professional, maybe a vlog, maybe YouTube content, but I wouldn't trust it with, the typical scenario that everyone wants is I want to put it on a gimbal and I want to be able to track a subject and move and make sure that it's always in focus. I probably would not trust it with that. It does seem to be better than the GH4, and if I can get it working reliably, that'll be nice. But it's just kind of it's probably not as big of an issue as people are making it out to be. It's just this one thing that's it's very divisive. It's controversial. It's not like it's a make or break it for the camera. It's just something that like there's two sides that some people are saying it's working, and then there's some people who are saying no, it's garbage.
Yeah, yeah, I have been seeing that a lot, and it's unfortunate too because like even the GH4, I thought was in photo mode was really good with autofocus. Like it's really quick, and it does lock on really well. And like the same thing with the GH5, it's like in photo mode, it's really good, it's really quick. But the moment you go to video, it's like somehow that autofocus capability just goes out the window. Especially on the GH4, that was like huge. Like just forget about using the GH4 and autofocus. That was just my experience with it. But with the GH5, I definitely also think that there was a lot of hype building up to the release of the camera. So much so that I think a lot of people who are in the camp of, oh, it sucks, got their hopes and expectations up because of what a lot of what the videos leading up would say. Some of these Panasonic reps, claiming that it's amazing, that it's, much better than the GH4, that it's the best that they've ever had. And that's fine and well and dandy. And, as a general public, we got to understand that these people are out not to get us, but to sell the product. We got to remember that a lot of these people are out to sell the product. And putting that aside and just kind of seeing, what the camera is capable of, I definitely would agree that as far as professional use is concerned, it's at this point, maybe a firmware update would fix that, but at this point, it's definitely unreliable.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people are pointing to is that they're saying the Sony stuff is better, the Canon stuff is better, and I don't think there's anyone denying that. If you want to try and tell me that the GH5 autofocus is better or on par with what Sony and Canon are doing, I would have to disagree based on my initial tests. If there's some magical formula that I can punch into the camera and get it to work like the Sonys and the Canons, great. I would love to do it. But on the flip side of that too, though, I think is that it's not, the autofocus is such a small feature for me because I'm not going to use it all the time. It's not going to be something that, I've been shooting the past 3 years with the GH4 and not having autofocus. So would it be nice to have at the level of the Sonys and the Canons? Yes. But there are other features on the GH5 that I think kind of are more of the priority. They're top of the list where autofocus is maybe towards the bottom for me. And so that's why I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit more about like when you started shooting with it after buying it, was there something that you were like really glad that was now on the GH5 as an upgrade from the GH4, one of the standout features? I don't know if the frame rate really matters to you, if it's, did you get Vlog L with yours?
I did. I actually just got it today. And I did just install it literally just before we came on here. So I haven't had a chance to actually play with it and test it compared to the GH4. And what I really want to test too is like I said before, shooting external, it's seeing how the two cameras compare, especially with Vlog, because that was one of the issues on the GH4 was shooting internally with Vlog. Just the image wasn't usable as far as post work. So yeah, that was again one of 4K 60p. I think is great, and I think it's amazing that they've been able to do that in price aside, a body this small and a form factor this small, and to be able to get that to the masses, I think is awesome. I personally don't shoot a lot of slow motion, so I think it's just an extra benefit to have that. One thing I will definitely say that, and I am a Sony owner too. I do own the Sony X6500. I did own the 6300 and the 6000. And ever since I got the 6500, I really got to talk about the stabilization inside the GH5, because that has just changed everything for me as far as having to put, like, for example, in some of my professional work, having to throw the GH4 on a shoulder rig because it's just not usable. It is usable, but sometimes in certain situations, it's not usable as far as going handheld. You really need to stabilize it. Having a stabilizer inside the body, again, I think is a wise decision that Panasonic has chosen to do. And I'll test it a little bit more, but as far as I'm concerned, in the couple days that I've had it, it is by far the best stabilization that I've used in any camera body. Have you played with it yet? Have you really tried to see? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, any camera can always be put on a tripod, but it's only a few of them that have stabilization. So I've been shooting everything handheld with the GH5. I think literally every shot of my test footage is me holding it with my hands at different focal lengths, and it works really, really well. I've been kind of doing the same shot side by side with the GH5 and then doing it with the GH4 and kind of going back and forth. And even just looking at the monitor on the GH4, and I'm using the 12 to 35, which is kind of, it does have stabilization in the lens as well. And I'll have that on the GH4, and I'll still see kind of there's just the shakiness that's kind of the jitteriness in anyone's hands. And then on the GH5, it's like super, just it almost looks like I'm locked down, you know, not perfectly. You can still tell that there's some movement to it, but it's so much better. And having that feature, I think, is one of the standouts. Thing being, though, is that is not a unique feature to the GH5. There's a lot of other cameras. So if on the A6500, that has stabilization as well, correct?
It does. Yes, it does. It does.
How do they compare, do you think, between the GH5 and the A6500? Because I feel like that's a lot of people are drawing the comparison between those two cameras, specifically with the autofocus, but maybe also with stabilization.
Yeah, I definitely see some comparisons with the autofocus. As far as the stabilization is concerned, I don't look at stabilization. I know everybody else does, but I don't look at stabilization in terms of stops. I look at it in terms of usability. How usable is it in real world scenarios? And the A6500 definitely is miles above usability terms the A6300, which that was just a nightmare with the rolling shutter and trying to use that, you know, handheld. It's just impossible. So the 6500, the stabilization is really good. I'm not gonna lie, it's not terrible. I know I've seen a couple recent videos, especially like Dave Dugdale just throw up a video about his A6500 is performing horribly as far as stabilization is concerned. It's got like way more micro jitters than, you know, any other stabilization that I've seen, which is kind of interesting. And I think going back to the 6300, the release of the 6300, it was like we were getting tons of varying reports about failures from all across the board, whether it was stabilization or it was battery or it was overheating or a whole bunch of things. And when the 6500 came out, it was like, okay, some other cameras, like you said, have this feature already. So how do they stack up? And the 6500 is good, but as far as like taking it out, going on the street and just going out, even on a non-professional use, just going out and shooting with it, I don't think it's that good. Compared to the GH5, it's like you go out and I'm just talking video here. I'm not talking like photos.
That's totally cool. Everything on my channel is about video. I don't care about, I mean, I do care about photography, but I don't care about photography. I want to talk about video production, filmmaking, that stuff.
Exactly. So it's like the GH5, when I first tried it, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And then when I kicked on that E stabilization mode, although it does punch in a little bit, so you lose a little bit of the lens, I was blown away by how stable it was. And like even just walking straight and just kind of filming what's in front of you, it was just mind blowing to me how good the stabilization is. Now, I have seen some warping. Almost like when you use warp stabilizer in Premiere, you can see kind of in the background, it's like pulsing a little bit. I have seen some of that if you're really moving fast or It's almost like when the rolling shutter kicks in, it kicks in as far as the pulsing in the background and like the wobbliness. But if you're steady and you're really finessing it, you can get some amazing results with the stabilization in the GH5.
I love that it's there as an option, and that's what, like, when I look at the GH4 to the GH5, it seems like they just took a GH4 and then pumped it full of steroids with all these additional features. So I love that these are options, like the autofocus, having more control over how it's actually performing so that people can dial it in the way they want, having stabilization so you can use it or not use it, having no crop in 4K is a really nice thing to have. I love that. I love the internal codec. I'm still not sure. It does seem to play back on my machine a little bit choppier, or there's a little bit more chug to it than like a ProRes file. And so I definitely like, would I only record internally? Even, it is 10-bit, it is 422, but I think it's still, H.264 compression or H.265, depending on the mode you're in, and what they're going to be unlocking later with firmware and all that stuff. But having the external recorder getting ProRes files, still 10-bit 422, I could see myself still doing that for the smoothness of editing, because anytime you're working with like more compressed files, it's harder for the machine to play back. And my laptop is, I think it's a 2013, but I honestly don't know. I could check right now. So, like, I've got to be a little bit careful because my home stuff for what I do, my YouTube content and whatnot, it's a 2012, is, I still want to use high quality files. So stuff from like the Ursa Mini 4.6K, the GH4, the GH5 now. My work computer is like a brand new iMac, so I'm not really too worried about it. It's more for my personal stuff. And I imagine there's a lot of people out there who they would love to have the GH5, but the beefier these codecs get, the higher the bit rates, the greater the resolution. Because now I thought it was cool. I didn't even know this, but I thought it was really cool that they made the Cinema 4K 2398 on the GH5.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
I hadn't really even seen that. I just like turned the camera on and was like, oh, I can do this now. Why did no one tell me? Those Panasonic marketing guys should have been more on it. But yeah, I see so many of these features being added to the GH5. But for me, the kind of biggest flaw I see with the GH5 is that the visual quality, aside from all the extra features, aside from all the bells and whistles and the help that those give you in terms of ease of use and not maybe necessarily needing a shoulder rig or being able to do slow motion at higher frame rates, when you're looking at the picture side by side between the GH5 and the GH4, they're very similar. And I think that if you bought a GH4, maybe you bought multiple GH4s, and then you're like, well, I want to upgrade to the GH5, you really have to need those bells and whistles and those other features to justify it, I think, in my mind. Because if it's like a talking head interview or just kind of like a standard, you just need 4K, you just need 24 frames a second, the visual quality, the difference between the two is very minor. And I think the GH5 is more of an upgrade, and we can talk about that a little bit, but I want to get your thoughts in terms of what the footage actually looks like. Do you see a benefit to the GH5 over the GH4, or do you think they're pretty comparable?
So in terms of image quality, like just pure image quality, excuse me, I haven't actually seen a huge difference. If we're talking shooting internally, as far as the 10-bit 422, you can definitely push it way more than you can the GH4, if that's something that you want to do. As far as shooting externally, I know you can do, I don't have the Shogun Inferno or the Ninja Inferno, so I can't do 4K 60p 10-bit 422, but that's fine. I can do 10-bit 422 at 24, which is fine. And shooting 10-bit 422 24 on the GH4 versus doing it internally on the GH5, in terms of being able to push in post, it is marginally better. I mean, you would really have to like stare at the waveform to see any sort of difference. And that has something also to be said about the data rate inside of the camera. We're given a higher data rate, 150 megabits per second, which is great. But when you're talking recording 10-bit 422, realistically, you need at least 500 megabits per second. And if you're doing like ProRes HQ, at least on the Pixie 5 that I have, video devices, you're talking like 800 to 900 megabits per second to play with, versus 150 internal versus 100 in the GH4. So I don't know. As far as like image quality, do I think specifically just for that it's worth upgrading? No, I honestly don't. That's my true honest opinion. If you own a GH4 and really the only thing you're trying to get out of the GH5 in terms of benefits is just image quality, pure image quality, I honestly don't think you're going to see it. Will that change when the firmware comes out? You know, we've seen the Panasonic roadmap as far as firmware upgrades. Will that change when the 400 megabit per second comes out? Maybe. I don't know. From what I can tell on the GH4, shooting ProRes way higher than they're going to give us inside the camera, I don't think so. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on pure image quality.
Yeah, my initial testing is leading me to a similar conclusion, and that's not to say that the GH5 isn't a worthy upgrade, because of all the features that we talked about, all that marketing hype. I think 99% of it's true. Maybe minus a couple points for the autofocus if you want to get you know, kind of, you want to gripe about it a little bit. But all that stuff is great. Just for me, I made a video a while back talking about the GH5 versus like the A7S Mark III, like whatever that looks like. And what I see is the two camps of where people find them. Like I picked the GH4 because of, you know, the 4K obviously, but then also all the video features, the 180-degree shutter angle, being able to set that, good battery life, having just 422 10-bit HDMI output, like the proper video features that they started to put in the GH4 compared to what Sony was doing, which is kind of more of this like a truer hybrid, if that makes sense, where like it's definitely a photo camera, but it also has some cool video features, but then, hey, it overheats every once in a while, and hey, the batteries don't last that long, and, you know, but then, hey, it's got 14 stops of dynamic range, you know, so there's, when it comes down to pure image quality, the Sonys do win, the Canons do win, but they are so limiting in what they offer for video features. And I get so much flack for this of like, these aren't video cameras, they're photo cameras that have video features. I'm like, Panasonic talks about this camera like it's a video camera.
Absolutely.
Everything they, like the first announcement for the GH5, it was almost all video features. I can't even think of one like photo feature that they're like, hey, this does this cool photography trick. It's all video. That's really what they're pushing. And like, I love that about the GH5, and I love that that's the direction they've gone, because it resonates with me and how I like to shoot and what I like to do. But then I look at the footage and I'm like, it's still 12 stops of dynamic range. And now I've been shooting on the Ursa Mini 4.6K, and it's night and day between the GH4 in terms of dynamic range. What I will say though, you haven't had a chance to do it yet with the with Vlog-L, but I will say that on the GH5, the log mode is, I don't want to say way cleaner, because that sounds probably better than it is, but it is significantly cleaner than the GH4. I've done some side-by-sides, and I don't know what they're doing, if it's just better noise reduction, like internally. Even I've turned it all the way down, the noise reduction that they let you turn down, or what, but just like so many people had issues with the GH4 and the log mode and the shadows being so noisy. And that's something where like I'm constantly shooting overexposed, so I can just grade it down and kind of hide that noise, bury the noise. The GH5 in the shadows looks a lot closer to the Ursa Mini, surprisingly. And so that is one thing where like, I don't know how you like to think about dynamic range, and I don't actually technically know the technical definition of dynamic range, but I think a lot of people think about it like, if you set two cameras side by side, you both set the same aperture, the same ISO, same shutter, you had them both equal in terms of getting your exposure right, one would be able to see into the highlights more. I think that's kind of how a lot of people envision it, like, oh, the dynamic range, I'm getting more of the highlights, I can see more. But another way to maybe think about it is that if you're exposing for those highlights, how far down into the shadows can you see? And that is one thing that I'll say about the GH5, that from my initial test, the shadows look a lot cleaner and a lot more usable, so you don't have to bury them as far. So I guess technically there may be some extra dynamic range there compared to the GH4, but if you set the GH4 and the GH5 to the same exposure and you point them at like the same thing, it's not like the GH5 is going to see into the highlights anymore. They're still going to blow out. They're still going to be gone. But if you stop down, those shadows become a lot cleaner, a lot richer. So I'm excited for you to test that out, because when I started seeing them side by side in Premiere, it put a smile on my face to see log mode actually looking how I want it to look, and not like how it looks on the GH4 internally, which is just
terrible.
It's really disappointing. I mean,
yeah.
It's nice when you have an external recorder and you get that higher quality codec going, but even then, those shadows are just so noisy, and there'll be people who say, "Oh, just shoot overexposed," but like the point of log and why you do that is for the maximum dynamic range. So if you have to shoot overexposed and you're blowing out highlights, well, then what's the point? So it's an interesting dilemma. But I would guess that the GH5, in terms of dynamic range, if you're looking into those shadows, you can see a little bit deeper into them when it's a little bit cleaner, which I'm glad to see.
That's really good, because I personally love shooting in log mode. I love shooting, believe it or not, even though it's you know, I love how everybody makes this argument, oh, 8-bit 420, you can't shoot log. Well, maybe on the GH4 you can't, but on something like the A6500, shooting on S-Log2 and grading in post, it's actually not bad. And I feel like as long as the picture profile, the engineers get it right, it doesn't matter really per se what, I mean, maybe if you were to blow it up on a cinema screen, of course, it probably look god awful. But as far as like your output media, if you're just talking like the internet, primarily YouTube, Vimeo, things like that, it's like 8-bit 420 really doesn't matter. And like, if it looks good, it looks good. So like on the A6500, as far as dynamic range, you definitely have way more dynamic range than the GH4. And it's like the shadows on the 6500, you can really get them nice and dark without having any noise. I definitely do agree that Vlog shadows on the GH4 are god awful. I mean, if you really do not have it dialed in as far as your lighting is concerned, as far as the profile is concerned, it's unusable. Especially when you get up into the higher ISOs beyond 800. It's like I would never shoot. For me personally, I would never shoot beyond 800, just because it's like you run the risk of just failing with that clip, you know. And I don't want to, on a professional shoot anyway, I would definitely wouldn't want to have to throw away footage or have to reshoot because I wasn't exactly precise enough in trying to get the camera to do what I wanted it to do as far as log's concerned. In the 6500, and I really want to test them side by side, the 6500 and the GH5, it's like you can be precise, but you don't have to be that precise. That 14 stops of dynamic range gives you that flexibility. Now, I'm interested to see how different the GH5 is as far as Vlog's concerned, because I haven't seen anybody actually posting any content of Vlog. I think I only saw like 1 or 2 videos, but it wasn't like a comparison. So it's not like you could judge those and say, oh, it looks much better based off of those. You know, you kind of got to compare the two, I'd say, side by side, and just really look at them and go, okay, wow, this is actually much better if you're just staring right at it and just looking at it. So I'm definitely interested to try out Vlog.
I wonder if we can get it. I wonder, because I can share my screen. I wonder if it would come through, or if just the stream is just such garbage quality. Because I could try and pull up some samples. Maybe I'll just save it for another video, because I assume it's not going to look good on a Google Hangout, and I'd have to go through the files and pull out the ones that I'm looking for. But yeah, it's for me. I still don't know. I gotta do some more hands-on with the GH5.
Do you do a lot of log shooting? Do you actually use Vlog a lot on the GH4?
Yeah, almost all the time. Almost all the time. But it's one of those things, like when I'm shooting, most of the time it's with a team of people, and so maybe I'm directing and other people are opping the camera, and I'm constantly telling them, like, shoot overexposed, shoot overexposed, shoot overexposed. I even made my own LUT that was 2 stops, like it like pushes it down 2 stops.
Yeah, 2 stops, yeah.
So that people would be looking at that and being like, oh, it's too dark, I need to brighten it up, I need to brighten it up. I don't use that all the time, but it's a helpful tool. And then like showing people footage in editing and saying, like, look, it looks exposed on the LCD screen. It looks good, but it's underexposed. And it's so hard for people to wrap their minds around, because even the camera will tell you, yeah, this is, you know, perfect exposure, and you need to go over that on the GH4. The GH5, it looks like it's more like what you're talking about with the 6500, where there's a little bit more leeway there. For, you know, if you're on exposure, underexposure, overexposed, you've got some wiggle room there, which is good to see. But yeah, I'm shooting log just because I was shooting Cinelike V because I had to for so long, and then Panasonic, they had the whole vlog. It's all free, you know. Everyone's rushing for the gold and the image app going in there, and so I was able to, you know, get in there, play around with it, and then it's switching from a Cinelike V, Cinelike D profile to a log profile. I think log stuff just looks nicer to begin with. I really like that look. And, you know, obviously you wouldn't want to finalize anything that way, but as a starting base, it's just so raw and organic. And it, like, you know, you're not getting someone else's manipulation of the color and of the curves. You get to put your own spin on it, and I really, really like that. And, you know, shooting with the Ursa Mini 4.6K, having that film mode that's like, I don't know if it's technically log, but it's pretty close. It's an equivalent, I'd say. Having that raw footage look the way it does, like, I don't want to go back. You know, if I had to shoot with the that's why I'm kind of, another thing that sucks about the GH5, we're talking about things that suck, is that it doesn't come with vlog included. I don't know why they did that. So you said you had to pay an extra $100 for it, or did you get it with a pre-order, or was there some kind of?
No, I was really upset that they did that too. I was really hoping that they were just going to give it to us. I mean, if you're really talking about like competition between, you know, it's like Sony gives it to everybody. Well, you know, why can't Panasonic do that? I
Without
get
even the cheapest cameras. That's what's so frustrating. Yeah. People are like, oh, it's a professional thing. No, Sony is giving it away on every camera they sell, regardless of the price. And this is a $2,000 professional video camera. That's how they're marketing it. And they're not going to give us and Sony has what, 3 log profiles now?
Yeah, S-Log 2, S-Log 3, and I don't know, some S something. But it's like, why wouldn't you? Like, I know, okay, if we're talking camera companies, it's like, I know bigger camera companies, the Reds, the Aries, whoever, yes, they don't give you every single feature you can get when you purchase the body. I understand that. But if Panasonic was marketing this as a full-time professional camera, then I could understand a $100 upgrade. This was like something like a mini Varicam. Okay, fine, that's fine. It's a professional tool built for professionals. So in the end, professionals are most likely going to have to pay for it. But they didn't do that. They marketed it as a consumer camera with professional features. So it boggles my mind why you wouldn't include vlog in a consumer camera with professional features. I wish I didn't have to pay the $100 to get it. But
do they still ship you a piece of paper?
Where is it?
No, they still.
It's somewhere over here. Yeah, they still do ship you a piece of paper.
The blue piece of paper that shows up in a box. So stupid.
Piece of paper. Yeah, it is pretty stupid.
It blows my mind every time I think about, like, someone had to think that up. Someone had to think, like, we're going to charge people $100 for this thing. It's going to be in the camera already. It's just going to be an unlock code. We're going to charge people $100 for it. Well, how do they get the code? Let's print it on a piece of paper, put it in a box, and mail it to them. Like, this was the plan that someone had, and it blows my mind that that decision was actually made.
It blows my mind that somebody else thought it was a good idea. like, oh my God, like, it's definitely got to go through a chain of command that, you know, that request. So somebody approved it. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, it cracked me up. I looked online and it was like out of stock. You know, it's like, how is a code out of stock? How does this happen?
They didn't have enough blue strips of paper, I guess.
Yeah, it's so silly. Is there anything else about the GH5 that stands out to you that's worthy of note? I really like some of the smaller features. I made a video walking through the menu system, but it kind of stood out to me, the waveform vector scope options. Like, that was kind of a nice addition.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the minute features. I do like that. I do like having the waveform versus the histogram. For me, it's always been, you use the histogram primarily when you're, well, for me, you use the histogram when you're shooting photos. You use the waveform when you're shooting video. At least that's the way it's always been for me. And to have something like that, I think is awesome. Every other camera I've ever used that's small doesn't have that type of feature. And to have waveforms on a small body like this really does help, especially when you're shooting in log mode. I think another thing that's really cool is that they allow LUTs inside the camera. Have you used that feature yet?
Yeah, it was the first thing I turned on because it's like right on page one, I think, if my memory serves me. And I was like, that's so cool, because on the GH4, my biggest problem was they give you vlog, okay, but there's no way to monitor it internally. Okay, no problem. I've got an external recorder. It's the Blackmagic Video Assist 4K. Oh wait, that doesn't let you monitor LUTs. They released a thing without the ability to do LUTs, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So I was like, I think I was tweeting at Blackmagic like once a month, just being like, when are LUTs coming? When are LUTs coming? They're finally there. Like I did a review on the Video Assist 4K when it first shipped, and was like disappointed because there were some really glaring omissions when it came out, and there's still some problems. Like using LP6s, I think, was a bad choice for batteries, but all the stuff they actually can fix that's not hardware related, that's software related, Blackmagic has done a really good job. It took them a little bit longer than I would have liked, but they finally came around. They got LUT support in there. So having that right from the get-go in the GH5 internally is an incredible feature to have. And I like that they give you that Rec 709 like right there. And from what I've been shooting, it's been working perfectly. It's like, it's not too much contrast. It's the right amount, so I can gauge my focus a little bit better. I can see a little bit more saturation, like what it's actually closer going to look like. But what I find with a lot of like LUTs and other monitor solutions or log modes is they like push the contrast too much, and then all of a sudden stuff is clipping in my shadows and my highlights, and I'm like, well, I want to actually know what data I'm losing and what I'm keeping. So it's been working really well for me so far.
Nice. Yeah. Another thing I think is really cool too is I don't know if you've seen some of the new custom selections that you can add to the FN buttons, but one thing I've been doing here, let me, I just want to see. One thing I've been doing is GH5 here, one thing I really like is they now added the ability to not only switch between white balance modes like instantly by assigning it to an FN button, but you can also switch profiles instantly by assigning it to an FN button. So like, for instance, if you're doing like run and gun and you're outside and it's super bright out and you're shooting daylight white balance, and then your subject goes inside and you're following them inside, well, I don't think on the GH4 you can change your white balance while you're recording, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure when you're recording, you can't change your white balance. On this, you can actually hit one of the buttons and it will change it for you. Boom, right there. There you go, an FN button, which is amazing. It's super fast. You don't really have to think about it. You just do it and it does it. That's a really cool feature I thought was interesting.
That sounds awesome, because that's one of those features that I'm too lazy to discover sometimes. It's like, I got a custom program buttons. Like, there's so many cameras where they give you those features, and then like all it does is like puts like an Instagram filter on, or like it changes like, it gives you a button you don't need. Like that was my big criticism against the Ursa Mini, was it gave me these buttons that like I didn't need, and the buttons I wanted weren't there. And so in the past, the function buttons I've probably neglected more than I should have. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that sounds awesome. That's a very common situation where you're going from outside to inside to outside, and you want to switch white balance fast. And like the GH cameras are not fast at even dialing in your white balance quickly. Like if you want to dial in your Kelvin, like it takes a couple seconds. So just to be able to pop a button, that's a really helpful feature, and makes me think I need to explore those function buttons a little bit more.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. And I mean, not to jump on the bandwagon, but if we're talking about features, one thing I actually really like is that the fact that they decided to use USB-C as the port. Okay, so two things that I really want to mention are the full-size HDMI, I think, is awesome. And
no. I'm gonna you can tell me why it's awesome, but I'm gonna do a little rebuttal on this, because I got a little beef.
For me, the full-size HDMI, I think, is awesome because, all right, I didn't have that much of a problem with the micro HDMI on the GH4, primarily I use my GH4 in a cage, so 9 times out of 10 I have an HDMI lock, so that thing's not going anywhere regardless. But I hate trying to unplug and plug that thing back in, because I'm literally like sitting there trying to jam it in, and it's like I got it the wrong way and it's upside down and I can't see what I'm doing because it's so small, and I got big hands, so it's like it won't go in. The bigger one for me is just a lot easier to go in, and it seems to be a lot more stable as far as just getting yanked out. It's like rock solid. I don't know about the HDMI clamp they gave you though with the GH5. It's a little plasticky, and it doesn't actually clamp on the HDMI. It actually just sits there like two posts. So like you basically can't bend it, beyond a certain point. So I don't really know how practical that is, but I do like, again, like I was saying, the USB-C. I know not everyone's going to like that. A lot of people are going to hate that. Maybe they should have just gone with USB 3 standard. But for me, the USB-C is great because I've actually switched over to the 2016 MacBook Pro, and that only has USB-C. And one thing that's beneficial about that is that if I've got the camera in, some sort of configuration where I have a plate on it, or I have something a cage on it that's like blocking access to the SD card door, like for instance, the Versa cage that I have for my GH4, if I were to put it on my GH5, it would slightly block the cage because the body's like a little bit different. So, or it would slightly block the SD card door because the cage bar is like slightly too close now because it's a different body size. So I don't actually have to take the SD cards out. I can just connect it directly to the computer, and it goes just as fast as if you were to take the cards out, put them in a reader, and then connect it to your computer. But anyway, that's just a personal thing. So tell me why you hate the HDMI.
I don't hate it. I think people just make a bigger deal about it than they need to. So I have, over the past 3 years, I've been shooting on 2 different GH4s. Using the micro HDMI port pretty consistently. I'd say it's pretty heavy abuse. Not that I'm treating it bad, but just using it frequently over the past year, definitely, but maybe longer than that. And I hear people complaining all the time about like fiddly connections, and it's loose and it's bad, and oh, if they only had a full-size HDMI, blah, 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 like that would solve all the problems. I haven't had one problem. Now, granted, I haven't dropped the camera, like I haven't yanked on the cable. So like I'm careful with it. But as far as like it being loose, the only time I've had connection issues is with the cable itself, not with the camera. The port on the camera has always been solid for me. Could it be better with the full-size HDMI? Maybe, but I've also had full-size HDMI cables just like the whole tip just rip off. I don't know if it's ever happened to you where like all the wires
I have had that happen.
Come out and you're like, oh, I can't fix this. It's going in the garbage. But like I was watching Tony Northrup's video where he was comparing the GH5 to some other cameras, and he called out the HDMI port, and he made it sound like it was this amazing thing. Like the micro HDMI sucks and the full size is so much better. And oh, thank goodness they did this. I think it's making a little bit more out of it than needs to be said. Yeah, bigger HDMI ports. Okay, great. That's cool. But like for me, it was never that big of an issue with the micro HDMI is all.
Yeah, it's a small, minute thing. It's not something that you would think of, when you're looking at a camera. Oh, what kind of HDMI size port does it have? So whatever. But yeah, what do you think about the 6K photo mode and upcoming 6K anamorphic mode?
So I haven't had a chance to play around with that yet because from my understanding, the photo mode is just that. It's photos. It's not making video files. I mean, could you potentially turn it into a video file?
Yeah, basically what it does is it records a video file, but it's at a hard 30 frames per second. And where you run into issues is, the shutter speed is not 180 degrees. So you're at a hard 30 with whatever shutter speed you're actually shooting at. So
is there audio with it as well?
I don't know if there's audio. I actually don't think there is audio with it. I think it's kind of like the VFR modes, where if you're in a higher VFR mode, you don't get audio. But if you shoot 4K 60p and you conform that in post, then you do get audio. No, I don't. I'm pretty sure you don't get audio in 6K photo mode. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of those things like I love having options. I love when they put more features into cameras for people who are going to use them, and I may find a need for it at some point. But more resolution is not the thing that I think most people are asking for at this point. You know, Red is even pushing to like 8K now, and unless you're Michael Bay, I mean, I kind of say that jokingly. I know there's people who appreciate what Red is doing, and there's people who love to shoot high resolution stuff. I get it, but I think a lot of people right now, 4K is sufficient. I definitely think we live in a world where if you're still shooting 1080, stop, upgrade to 4K, stop buying the Canon cameras that still give you 1080, get something that shoots 4K, because the downscaling ability and pushing everything to a clean, as pristine as it can be 1080p file from 4K raw files, I think is really, really nice. But the 4K to 6K upgrade is not something where I'm like trying to hack it together to like get video files out of these photo files. It's like, it's cool that it's there, but it's also like the 4K photo mode on the GH4, which I never used. I'm not one to scrub through footage like 30 frames a second to pull out like the perfect still.
Yeah.
If I'm taking photos, I'm taking photos and I'm snapping, you know, just like if I were to have one of like the super high speed cameras, like, is it like the D4S and like the, what's the Canon one? Like the
1DX Mark II.
Yeah, the ones that, you know, they're shooting like 12 frames a second, 15 frames a second, whatever it is, and people just hold down the shutter and it's got like an infinite buffer and it's just like who wants to look through that many photos? I get if you're doing like sports and that's your only job, but like if I'm doing portraits or I'm, you know, doing candids or whatever it is, I'm not going to want to sift through that, spend that much time in post-production to get like, oh, it's a couple milliseconds, you know, after or before to get it perfect. Most of the time, the only reason you think it's more perfect is because they gave you the option to see it. Right. I don't know if that makes sense, but like a lot of times, like if you're looking at like 10 photos and you're going to pick the best one, if you're looking at 100 photos, you're going to pick the best one. If you're looking at 1,000 photos, you're going to pick the best one. In all three of those scenarios, you pick what was the best. And so hopefully you're happy with it. Granted, if like a facial expression is weird or something's wrong, maybe you wish you had more, but most of the time, if you have at least 10 photos, you're going to have at least one of them be good or how you wanted. So I think having more may make it like slightly more perfect, but it's also that like, you would never know if you never had it.
Right. And it makes a lot more work too. And another thing too, is that I never use the 4K photo mode in GH4, so I don't see myself using the 6K photo mode. I am very interested about the 6K anamorphic. I do use the anamorphic. Well, I will now in the GH5, but I do use the anamorphic mode on the GH4 a lot actually, because I do shoot anamorphic.
What are you using for anamorphic glass?
I have actually 3 lenses. I've got the ProScar, which is a 2x squeeze, and I have the Iceco Cine Ultra 64, which is a 2x, well, it's a 1.9 times squeeze, almost 2 times. And then I have the Sancor 16D and the Bell & Howell Elmerit C something, some weird number. But in all of those lenses, those are all 2 times squeeze. So shooting on a 4:3 sensor, it really gives you the perfect, you know, aspect ratio. I tried them on my Sony, but that 16:9 sensor, I'm not really feeling that. You know, just way too squeezed.
Yeah, you need one of these.
I'm not Ridley Scott, but what is that? Oh boy,
this is the LA 7200. So this is the 1.33 Panasonic old like. So I've had this for the longest time, and it works. You know, if you put some diopters on there, you can kind of hack it together to get nice looking images. But being only a 1.33 squeeze, you don't really get a lot of the anamorphic effect. So some of that's kind of lost. It's not really that dramatic. So I do also have, I don't have it here with me, but I also have the SLR Magic anamorphic adapter that they have.
How is that?
I don't use it, and I don't use it because I've never been able to get clean, like what I would consider sharp images. I know there's a lot of people who say they like the anamorphic aesthetic, and I don't know if that means they like images that look like trash, but it's just whenever I put it on glass, and I probably have not given it enough of a chance, because the thing about shooting anamorphic is that it takes so much more time, you know, to set it up, to get things in focus. You definitely are not run and gun anymore, and you've got to be very, very specific with how you're setting things up. And that speed decrease is significant. And so oftentimes when I am trying to like set it up and test it out, like I can set up a shot, you know, just like a test shot that looks good, but like in real shooting situations, doing an interview, shooting B-roll, getting a shot for a commercial, whatever it might be, testing it out in that environment is where it's actually like, okay, well, is it actually going to work? And every time I've tried it, it's been really frustrating to work with because it hasn't looked the way I've wanted. There's been like ghosting and just kind of like extra coma and just like lens characteristics that like, it's like not sharp. It's not in focus, and it's really frustrating. And like, yeah, I can stop down to like an f8 to fix it, but then I'm not getting shallow depth of field and all that stuff, which I tend to like. So I haven't been using it, but I really wish I could, because it is a 2x anamorphic. And so maybe I just need to give it another look. But every time I've tried to use it, it's been a huge waste of time, because I end up taking it off and just shooting it regular and then cropping if I want that kind of 2.35 aspect ratio.
Yeah, definitely shooting anamorphic, especially on these smaller cameras, it's a process, and it's definitely not something you're going to be able to do quickly. I even have the speaking of SLR magic, I even have I think it's called the rangefinder. Yeah, you put it on the end of your lens, and it basically makes the dual focusing system one focusing system. So even with that, it's like using the for example, the Synchro, while it's really, really sharp, well, that particular lens is really sharp. While it's really, really sharp, and it is awesome to get that, you know, that cinematic look, it is a hassle. It is definitely a hassle. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not something you can run and gun, and really only can be used on either narrative pieces or, you know, just personal projects, really, unless you're getting paid to shoot anamorphic, in which case you probably rent real anamorphic glass and not some concoction of anamorphic, you know, scopes assembled, you know, in the jerry rig. But yeah, I'm interested to see how the 6K anamorphic works. Were there any other features as far as like the Panasonic timeline that stood out to you as far as what was coming in the future for the GH5?
I've basically written the timeline off, because I don't like to make decisions now based on promises of what's to come in the future. But I will say that all of our talk about all of these cool features that are in the Panasonic cameras and only in the Panasonic cameras makes me really want a GH5. Like it may like, because if I think about it, it's like, okay, well, you know, maybe I want the extra dynamic range of the A7S, you know, Mark III, when that inevitably comes out. But then it's like, but then I'm not going to have anamorphic. I'm not going to have waveforms. I'm not going to have like, because I know, well, I don't know, but I can take a pretty good guess that Sony is not going to start putting those features in. They're going to go with the route they've been going, which is sufficient, I'd say. You know, people make it work and they make lovely footage with it. But I love all of those, like just that Panasonic. I don't know who over there. Okay, so there's the guy who came up with the idea of shipping Vlog in a box, that guy. But then there's the other guy who's like, we should put anamorphic on this, you know, $2,000, $1,000 camera, whatever it is. And someone else is like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And he's like tinkering away, and it's like, yeah, it's a 4:3 mode. And it's like, why would anyone want to shoot 4:3? It's like, oh, it's for anamorphic. It's going to be so cool. And like that guy at Panasonic, I love that guy.
That guy's the man. That guy is definitely the man.
And even though I don't use it, having it there in the camera is just such a nice feeling. It's just like being able to set shutter angle. Like when I saw that on the GH4, my head almost exploded, I think, because my background comes from shooting the first professional video camera I ever shot on was the Canon XL1, and then from there it was the Panasonic DVX. And learning about shutter angle back then, it was like, okay, this makes sense. I can switch frame rates, and it's just always the same. You just have this shutter angle that it's set to. And then the 5D Mark II came out, and everyone's like, you know, what shutter speed do I use to make it look cinematic, make it look filmic, and everyone's doing the calculations of set it to 1/50, 1/50, 1/50, 1/50, and for years that's what everyone was doing, 1/50, 1/50. So then the GH4 comes out, and it's like I finally have shutter angle back. I've got it back, and I can switch frame rates, and it's always the right shutter speed because the shutter angle is set to 180 degrees. And so I make videos about this, like why this is so amazing, and people are like, what do you mean 1/180? Why would you shoot with such a high shutter speed? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You've been doing it wrong for years. Someone told you 1/50. And that's the thing that I see a lot of people do when they're shooting DSLRs or when they're maybe a little bit newer. They are shooting at one frame rate, like 24, and they set their shutter to 1/50 because someone told them to do that at some point. And then they switch to shooting like 60 frames a second, and they don't know what to do with their shutter. They leave it like 1/60. They won't try and do 1/50 if the camera lets them. And it's like, no, it should be 1/120. Well, why? Where'd you get that from? It's like, let's just follow the 180-degree shutter angle rule, or just set your camera to it if you have a GH4 or a GH5, and you'll be fine. It's perfect. It's simple. It's easy. But now I'm like re-educating people about this, and they're like, there was some guy who like lit up my YouTube. I think he was just trolling, but he lit up one of my videos with like 6 comments in a row saying I was an idiot, I was wrong, 180-degree shutter angle. I'm like, this is like this used to be basic stuff, but now it's so different because the photography and video have been so merged.
That's mind-blowing to me because I actually come from both a video and film background. I actually got some of my education with Doug Hart, who is in local 699, which is just he's a camera operator, and he does it for a living. And he does teaching and everything, and I learned with him, and really this has been a staple for over 100 years. How are people not knowing this? You know what I mean? And what's funny is I find that a lot of people who don't know about shutter angle, and they're kind of just finding out about it, is that what you don't realize, especially too, is that you can play with shutter angle and kind of use it to your advantage a little bit more than you can shutter speed. It's a little bit more flexible, and some cameras allow you to dial it in too, specifically, especially when you have like banding issues from fluorescent lights. A really cool feature that's overlooked a lot is the Synchro scan feature on the GH4 and the GH5, where if you've got pulsing fluorescent lights that are causing terrible banding, you could dial it out by dialing in the shutter angle to exactly what it needs to be so that you're not getting banding issues, which I think is awesome. I wish, and I talked to Panasonic Sean Robinson about this. I was like, Sean, why do we not have shutter angle and dB? Why is that not together? We've got every other combination except shutter angle and dB. And his response was that shutter angle comes from cinema, dB comes from video, and that's absolutely true. And I was like, okay, that's true, but it'd be nice to just have that, so that if you do come from both backgrounds, instinctively this is what you're using if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, but it's just a photography camera with video features. It's not a professional video camera. I don't know if you didn't get the memo.
Anyone who says that, I don't know where they're coming from. It is a photography camera, but realistically, even Panasonic has been known to say that it's pretty much a video camera first, photography second. Of course, they won't ever really say that, but we know from watching and listening, that's what it is. It's a video camera that takes really, really good photos, especially the GH5. I did get the chance to compare side by side in Lightroom the raw files for the GH4 and the GH5, and Camera Raw, sorry, not Lightroom. And side by side, and I know we're talking mostly about video quality, but just because it's in there, the photo quality is much, much, much improved than the GH4. So if you were thinking about picking up a GH5 specifically for its photo features, I mean, I don't know who would do that. I'm sure there are a lot of people that would do that. I personally don't know anyone. But
they're all on 4.3 rumors. They're always telling me that it's a photo camera and they use it for photography, and I'm an idiot for using it for video. I should get a professional video camera. So they exist. They're definitely out there.
Yeah, I That's just ridiculous. But
Well,
yeah.
so what specifically about the raw files? Because I think this is a good thing too. Because even though it's talking about photography, which I'm still into, we're talking about the sensor and what the sensor is seeing. So what is different between the photos on the GH4 versus on the GH5?
So when you're shooting at lower ISOs, like native 200, 400, whatever is between 800, it's a lot cleaner. Like on the GH4, if you shot, let's say, like I do a lot of sunset stuff. So like on the GH4, if you're shooting sunset, you tend to see, even at lower ISOs, 400 and above, you tend to see noise in the sky. If you look really closely, you could see it. It's there. It's evident. On the GH5, it's like you don't really see the noise until you get to like 800. In between 800, 200, 400 is really, really clean. If you're like pixel peeping and you're down to the pixel. Not only that, but I feel like, and maybe this goes back to the vlog, but I feel like the image quality as far as photos are concerned, something's going on with the processing, because it just overall, even when you turn the sharpness down on both cameras, it looks much sharper and clearer on the GH5. Obviously, 16 megapixel sensor, 20 megapixel sensor, you're going to get slightly better photos. But even with that said, I feel like photo wise, they've done a little bit of tweaking as far as the image is concerned. And I don't know how that translates as far as video is concerned. I mean, it theoretically should be the same, but then again, this is a photo camera with, professional, or not a video camera, but a photo camera. So I don't know. We'll have to see as more people dive into actually pixel peeping.
I'm curious too, because you have noise reduction settings in the camera, and most cameras give you the ability to reduce noise at higher ISOs. I almost wonder if they incorporated that step somewhere earlier in the process. So like, yeah, there is like the additional noise reduction that you can turn down, but if it's doing something before that stage in the image process, because if you're saying that the raw photo itself has less noise, like significantly less, like aside from the resolution increase and stuff, that makes me wonder, because if you're looking at the raw file, it should be the raw file,
right?
But yeah, I don't know, that's weird.
Yeah, it's strange. And I noticed too, like when you boost the colors, and I don't know if it's just the program that I'm using. I do use Lightroom, but I also use Camera Raw and Photoshop too. So it's like when I bring in the photos for the GH4 and bring in the photos for the GH5, I notice that when you're playing with it, you don't have as much flexibility with the GH4 raw files than you do the GH5 raw files. And I think you'd have to do a little bit more. I definitely would have to do a little bit more testing, but I definitely have noticed that I can tweak the GH5 image slightly better than I can the GH4, and go a little bit further before I start to see like posterization and start to see, artifacts coming up in the photos.
Huh, that's really interesting. I'll have to play around with that, because I definitely don't use the GH4 for the photo features. Most of the time we're shooting on like a 5D Mark III. But if I did snap some photos with the GH5, I actually could pull them up here, because I can actually pull up the vlog stuff. I'm going to see if this actually works.
Sure.
1 second. And you got to tell me if it looks good or if it's not even worth doing. But here I pulled Premiere up. Can you see this?
Let's see here. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So here's some shots I took. So this is the GH5 here, and I'm going to punch in because obviously you're not going to be able to see anything at that resolution. But so this is the GH5, the back of this chair, and then here's the GH4. Granted, so the GH4 this is internal. I didn't record it externally, but so if we're comparing, apples to apples, both recorded internally. Obviously, the GH5 has a much better internal codec, but there's like a ton of extra like color and just weird noise and patterns here in these shadows. And I also noticed these shadows are actually like slightly elevated in terms of like their exposure value. And if we go back to the GH5, it's a lot cleaner. There's like virtually no weird color banding going on in here. Yeah, it's like noisy. There's texture there, but it's not the weird
I
extra
don't see
color.
any color artifacting. I mean, even from looking at the laptop screen over a Google Hangout connection, I can literally see the difference.
Can you? Okay, because let me show.
GH4 has like color. You can see a color noise. While and if you're looking at the, I wanted you to pull up the waveform too, because if you switch between the clips, I'm sure you're going to see a slightly different waveform. But the color noise on the GH5, it's literally non-existent. At least from my eyes across this connection, I can't even see it.
Yeah, and I'll so here's what I'm saying. Like the blacks are just like a little richer in
Yeah.
here, and maybe that could be a difference in exposure. But I literally took the same lens, all the same settings, pulled it off one camera, put it on the other, and like pointed at the same thing. So you can even see that like the GH5 is a little bit wider because we got less of that crop. I tried to make a match as best I could, but you know, I'm shooting handheld. But yeah, so you see the waveform. So the GH4, see how the waveform's like more compressed. It's not, and if I go back to the GH5, it expands. It's still doing that vlog clipping at kind of that 20% mark and the 80% mark for your highlights and shadows, which I still think is annoying. But it's like it's putting more, it's putting more information in that range. And like the GH4 right here, you can see that there's like the shadows are just that like elevated, so you don't get those richer blacks. And then yeah, just to go back in one more time, I'm glad you can see this, because this is what I saw that like put a smile on my face when I was pulling these clips in here, looking at the GH5, and just granted it's not clean, you know, like there's texture there, but when I've been shooting this garbage, you know, on the GH4, and then seeing this on the GH5, it's just like, wow, that's really nice. And then, you know, I did even like a little color grade to this, you know, adding some contrast in, and it just looks really clean and really nice. So that's what I was talking about with the dynamic range. If you can see deeper into those shadows, ideally, you'd have a little bit more of that dynamic range to play with on the GH5 potentially.
Yeah, and you're definitely right. It is extremely annoying that when you're shooting vlog with the GH4, and I guess it does it too with the GH5, is that for anyone who's watching who doesn't know, when you shoot with it does compress the waveform like crazy. Unlike when you're shooting with a Sony camera, or I don't know if Fuji has log, but
yeah,
I know
they've got F-log, flog.
they have flog. When you're shooting with
we got slog, we got clog, we got flog, we got vlog.
Who decided to add these, like, oh my god, it's ridiculous. But it's like with those cameras, the waveform doesn't get all bunched up and jumbled up on you. Yes, it's squished because, you know, you're shooting log, but it doesn't like cap out on the monitor waveform. When you're shooting with the GH4, and I perceive the GH5, it caps at, I think it's 80 and 20 or something around there.
Yeah, it's around that range. And that's when I was talking about, you know, shooting with the team of other people who are using, you know, GH cameras. And obviously not like, you're a pretty educated guy on all things like tech. And I love that, talking to you about this stuff, because like we're so in sync, I think, with this stuff. But like not everyone's like that. There's a lot of people who are just camera ops, and you put a camera in their hands and they shoot. And I'm telling them, I'm like, you know, okay, you got to make sure like this line right here, 80% is clipping. They're all used to 100% being clipping. And I'm like, no, it's 80. Right here's where that's blown out. So anything, you won't ever get anything past that on your histogram, on your waveform. It won't ever go past. And then like right here, this is where your shadows are clipping. So you got to make sure you're above that, and like teaching them these weird intricacies of this specific camera. And I wish they had fixed that on the GH5, but they didn't. And it's funny too, because so if you remember back to the GH4, when log was released for free with the image app like Hack
2.3 version 2.3, yeah.
The histogram would, when you were in log mode, it would have the full 0 to 100, and then your histogram would just clip at 80 and clip at 20. But then when you actually bought the vlog code, the histogram adjusted, right? To where it would map those values to 0 to 100, so you'd actually have a proper looking histogram. Right. And that was doing it in the camera. On the GH5, when I booted up the waveform, it doesn't do that in the waveform internally with the with Vlog. So
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
So on
Interesting.
the waveform, it does the same thing where it clips at 80, and it's really goofy to have this like waveform on your screen, big and prominent, because like it takes up a lot of room.
It does. Yeah, I
On the
really
LCD.
wish, hopefully on a firmware update, they can allow you to change the size of that because, man, it takes up so much real estate.
So much real estate, and yet the top 20% and the bottom 20% is like unused in log mode, which is
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up too because at least when I shoot on the Pixie externally, when I use a LUT, it obviously reads the waveform. So like when I'm using a LUT, the waveform will look at the LUT and it will expand. So
oh, interesting.
yeah, it will. The waveform will actually use the LUT to tell you what's clipping and what's too dark. Now, I'm interested to find out if the LUT in the GH5 internal does that as well,
It does
or
not to
it
my knowledge.
continuously shows you 80/20.
Yeah, because I was shooting some stuff outside. I had the LUT turned on, and I still my 80% line was just like that's where all the data was stopping. It wouldn't go past. And I've gotten really used to it because the video assist, the Blackmagic video assist, doesn't use the LUT for your histogram. I don't know about waveform. I typically don't turn the waveform on all the time. I usually use the histogram. It's just kind of like an eyeball because it's a lot smaller. It's just in the corner.
Mhm.
But the histogram always reads the log profile. So no matter what LUT I use, the histogram always looks the same. So I wonder if there's an option in the Pix E, because I imagine that's probably got more features than the video assist. If you can tell it not to read the LUT, like as an option.
I don't think you can, unfortunately. I actually wrote into Video Devices about that, and I asked them that question. I never got a response, but it would be nice to turn it off, specifically for operating purposes, because if you are used to that, then you know where it's supposed to fall. The moment you put a LUT on it, it kind of messes with your mind, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I usually shoot here, but now it's here, so now where's my ceiling, as far as clipping the highlights?
Yeah, I could imagine that being kind of annoying to have to like look at a waveform or a histogram based on the LUT because you want to know what the raw data is, what you're capturing. The LUT is just for monitoring.
Exactly.
I wonder why they decided to do that. Maybe they'll do a little update. One thing I have to say, props to Blackmagic. Like I said before, they updated the video assist, and then I've been having problems with the Ursa Mini. I know this is totally unrelated to the GH5, so anyone who's watching, you came for the GH5, but you get a little Ursa Mini as well. Blackmagic has been really awesome to work with in terms of sorting out the problem, trying to get it fixed, getting it repaired, and then as well as just updating their product line. They don't always ship when they say they're going to ship, and the products don't always arrive with the features they say we're going to arrive, but they do seem like a genuine company interested in making their products better and doing that and helping their users like actually use the products they're putting out. Whereas I think there's some other companies that aren't quite as committed to that. They're just like, hey, we just want your money, buy our stuff. And I think that's a not as fun consumer producer relationship.
So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on, a little off topic, but what are your thoughts on and I know you just recently acquired one, your thoughts on the Ursa versus...
You make it sound like I found on the back of a truck.
No, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on, for people watching, the Ursa versus something like the GH5?
So based on that stuff that we were looking at just a little bit ago about having those cleaner shadows, that is a nice signifier that it's a little bit closer. Right now with the GH4, even recording externally, having 10-bit 422, the GH4 just is not color well compared to the Ursa. The Ursa, the 4.6K specifically, not the 4K. So if I ever talk about the Ursa Mini, it's the 4.6K version. Is just, it's so clean, and it's not a low light camera, but what it's recording is uber clean. So I shoot at ISO 800 almost all the time. 1600, you'll start to see some of the fixed pattern noise and stuff on my specific unit. Some people say that like the specific unit matters. I can't speak to that. I've shot on one unit from Lens Rentals. That was a rental that we were doing pretty significantly over a couple months. And then we were using the Ursa Mini so much that we just bought our own. having shot on those two different units, both of them are very, very clean at ISO 800, even in low light. So your exposure value isn't going to be bright, but what you're capturing is still clean. And I really, really like that. I cannot say the same for the GH4. And it looks like the GH5 is better, but I still don't think it's going to compete with the Ursa Mini. The Ursa Mini is definitely in that next step up, that next class, where I do think it's a good place to go if you're not satisfied with the GH4 or GH5 or other, you know, kind of consumer video camera type things. It's a nice step up, but with that, there's the price increase, there's the size increase, there's the weight increase. So it's not something that you can just throw on your Ronin M. Now you've got to get a Ronin, or you've got to get a Movi. You've got to upgrade that. Now you've got to upgrade your cases. You've got to, you know, so like now traveling is potentially more expensive. You need maybe more people because things are heavier. You've got these big V-Lock batteries, and you've got the Anton Bauer batteries. It's just everything's bigger. It's more of a production, which can be good because your footprint on set, I think, it looks better. You know, I've never once been shooting with the Ursa Mini and someone being like, "Is that a video camera?" But that happens all the time with the GH4. They're like, "That thing shoots video," because there's still those people out there who don't quite get it. And there's just kind of that, like, the prestige of it. You know, it's a nicer looking camera. There's more of a presence with it. And then the image quality is definitely a lot better. But saying all that, it's not like the GH4 sucks or the GH5 sucks or anything that's like cheaper sucks. I think they're still all usable. It's just finding, you know, that right tool for the job, as people like to say. But it's also like finding the right tool for you and like what makes sense for you. I think that anyone who is like an independent shooter who's buying their own equipment, go for the lower end stuff. Like there's no reason to, like, I see people and I feel kind of bad for them. Like they invest in these systems like Reds, or maybe they get like an Airy, or they get a Blackmagic even, you know, they invest all this money in it, and then they have to, it sounds bad, but they try and like, they whore themselves out as like operator rental kind of people, like, oh, you know, pick me and my camera. And they're constantly trying to find work to pay off the thing they bought. And you know, you have to, it's difficult because every project, you know, someone's looking for an FS7, someone's looking for a Red, someone's looking for an Alexa, someone's looking for a Blackmagic. All these different productions are looking for different things. And if you buy the one system that doesn't pan out or isn't popular in your area, or like there just aren't jobs available for that thing, now you're sitting there like, you know, lowering your day rate to get more and more money and to pay off this investment that you made. And I think that like a lot of people, should, maybe it sounds like you're settling, but like I don't think it is, because you can do so much with these cameras, you know, shooting on an A7S, shooting on a GH4, a GH5, even the stuff Olympus is doing, even if the stuff Fuji's doing or Canon's doing, like it's all so good relative to where it was only like 5 years ago, you know, considering like stuff, you know, professional stuff used to be shot on the 5D Mark II. They shot an episode of House on the 5D Mark II, and like, yeah, there's professional lights and the actors and the locations and all that stuff makes the image look better. Obviously, that's all kind of the stuff that's not on the spec sheet for the camera. But when people are looking at newer cameras, constantly trying to compare them to one another, it's like everything's good. Like it's all really, really good, and you don't have to buy the brand new Red 8K camera to shoot your short film. You can do it on a GH4. You could do it on a GH3, you know, if that's all you can afford. And I'd say definitely go with what you can afford, rather than, you know, trying to invest in something when you don't know that there's going to be a payoff.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was talking about in my last video that I uploaded. You know, the GH5 sucks. It's like the majority of people I hear online, at least recently, this whole controversial AF topic, it was like, the point that I was trying to make in that video was, it doesn't matter. Like none of these things, these bells and whistles really truly matter. Yes, they are tools that will help you get your job done easier in certain cases, most cases, but that is not going to make you or help you tell your story. And that's what matters most. It's like the gear to a certain extent does matter. But let me give you some advice. Do not go out and purchase a Red and think that just because you have a Red camera, you are now a video professional and people are going to hire you. That's not the way the real world works. You don't just get a camera and then magically you're you know, you're shooting Hollywood films. It's just not how it works. The way it works is you bring something different to the table with whatever you've got, and that something different catches someone's eye and makes them say, wow, this person actually knows what they're doing, and they can produce a great image, and they know how to tell a really good story. Let's hire this person to do the job, as opposed to people who, you know, take out a mortgage on their house and then go buy a red, and then they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs going, I've got work this week and then I'll have work for the next 5 months because, you know, I just can't get it because of whatever reason. It's like, use what you've got, make it work, and then once you have outgrown that tool and you really truly do feel that you've used it to its full potential, then I would consider you know, looking at other alternatives that will help you get the job done faster. Going back to this whole the right tool for the right job, I definitely agree with that. But also at the same time, I also think the right tool is the one that you have, the one that you're going to be able to use on a daily basis that's going to make you a better shooter, you know?
Oh, definitely. And most of the time when I'm talking about right tool for the job, it's like a professional job, a paying job. So if someone's paying you for like high quality stuff, you know, for a while, like the GH4, having it and 4K capping out at 30 frames a second. Okay, I can't do high quality 4K stuff, anything really slow motion. So I'd have to switch to 1080. So it's like, if we need to do something that we want it to be that overcrank slow motion look, but it still needs to be like really pristine, really high quality. Okay, well, I'm going to rent an FS7, or I'm going to rent an Ursa Mini or whatever, because the client's paying for it. And I think it's a disservice if, you know, someone's paying you money for something, like a good amount of money for something that's high quality, and you show up with a 5D Mark II and you're just like, and that's it, you know, like, and like people
at that point, you just become a guy with a camera, which is just kind of awkward. You know, nobody really wants that.
Yeah, definitely. And people get burned, you know, that way, that like people do video stuff, they hire the wrong person, and like the client's disappointed, and like the person doesn't have anything good for their reel. That's what I was going to say, is that when people are watching your reel, they have no idea what camera you shot it with. So if you're making awesome looking footage, make a killer reel, and it could all been shot on the GH1, you know, like half of my reel I think was shot on the GH1 because my reel is from 2012. It's really old. But that being aside, it's I don't know where I was going. I lost my train of thought.
To build on what you're saying, I absolutely agree. Anyone who's watching, it's like, if you're a Peter Gregg's watching, nice. If you're a you know, if you're a professional, okay, and you are getting paid by somebody to do a job, by all means, absolutely. If you need to rent a tool to get the job done, do it. Don't just go out and buy something because you think maybe one day you might need it for XYZ. In your casual time, if you've got what you've got, go ahead and use it. And if you really don't think that you need an upgrade and you're questioning it, hey, do I actually need to upgrade my camera right now to do what I need to do? If someone's asking me professionally, then I'll rent something. But if, as far as like owning something, what you've got is fine. You know, even the 5D Mark II, people are still using it today, you know, as a video camera. And while Magic Lantern and whatever, you could shoot raw, that's cool. It's like, the fact of the matter remains is that if you're used to something and you're using something and you're getting full potential out of it, then why do you need to upgrade? You know what I mean? I don't think it's based on a necessity. I think for a lot of people, it's more based on want. I want those features. I want to use that specific camera for whatever reason, but more than I need to. You know, what do you think about that?
What do you mean, like need to?
Like, as far as people wanting to like go out and get the latest greatest thing just because, rather than going out and getting the latest greatest thing because they actually need to use it because it's going to benefit them in any way, shape, or form.
There's always that attraction that I think we all have to the new stuff, which is why we're talking about the GH5, right? Like we're all excited. The buzz is there. It's new. It's cool. It's hot. And so we're going to be pulled to it. I think everyone is. I think you can't really avoid that. I think the people who maybe if you ever talk to somebody and they're like, oh, I'm still shooting on the DVX, perfect camera. It's the only camera I'll ever need. Yeah. It's like, I think those are the people who maybe aren't drawn to the GH5, but I think they're also kind of missing out, and they've, you know, like, you've got to stay up to date. But when, like, yeah, the need for something, like, I talk all the time about renting, and for the longest time in my career, I thought renting was a waste of money because you're just throwing it away and you don't have anything to show for it. But your investment is so much smaller, and if you can justify it for the project has X number of dollars allocated towards it, and you can put some of that towards a rental budget to get what you actually need rather than just trying to slap it together with something that you're kind of like duct tape and shoestring putting it together. It's so worth it to like the fact that I've been able to shoot stuff on the FS7 because I rented it, or I was able to shoot on the Ursa Mini because I rented it, or I've shot on the Red because I rented it. It's like the experience you get with the cameras is incredibly valuable because you're shooting with different systems that make sense for the content that you're producing. But then having something that's always in your back pocket, like a GH4, like a GH5, like an A7S, something that, you know, if you are doing it professionally, you're probably doing it every day, and guaranteed a lot of projects aren't going to be the huge budgets or the bigger budgets. They're going to be a little bit smaller budgets. So having something that's more affordable for you to invest in. But then aside from just the camera, it's like, okay, what kind of lenses are you getting? You got to have lights, because I talk about that all the time. It's like lighting is so much of what an image is. That like resolution and dynamic range and all that stuff is like kind of irrelevant as long as you're doing some proper lighting. What audio you're using. Like I put together like a video production kit video of like, here's everything that I shoot with, and I probably should update it because it's a little dated now. I've made some upgrades and some changes to that, but I put it together for the reason of like painting the picture of like, okay, for $6,000, here's an entire kit. Yeah, it's cheap stuff, but hey, it all works. And it all does a really good job. And if you use it all together, that $6,000 is going to look better than if you spent $20,000 on just having a Red camera and none of the other stuff. If you don't have lights, you don't have audio, you don't have good lenses, like having a $20,000 camera is meaningless. And you can do more with $6,000 as long as you're willing to understand that you've got to kind of diffuse your money across these different areas, and you can't just put it all in one thing of like, the camera is going to make me better. You know, it's got 16 stops of dynamic range. It's got 8K. It's got, you know, whatever it is. It's got higher frame rates. It's like, that doesn't matter. You need lights. You need all these other things to help build out the production. And then even aside from that, you know, if someone is actually interested in like a short film, it's like paying actors, getting actors who are actually good, not just your friends and family, securing good locations, not just shooting in your basement. You know, like those things feel like a waste to some people because they want to have the GH5 in their hands, but that's the kind of stuff that actually makes your project work and so much better than like the camera ever will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like lighting is way more a part of making the image look spectacular than any camera will ever do, no matter how much it costs. If you're not lighting and you really don't know what you're doing as far as lighting is concerned, and don't take this scenario as an example because this shadow is god awful, but you know, I'm just saying, if you really don't know what you're doing as far as lighting, that should be the area that you're focusing on rather than wanting to get a new camera, you know?
There's a reason that like Hollywood movies look consistently good, even though the cameras keep getting upgraded. You know, like watch a movie from the 70s and the 80s, the 90s, as long as it wasn't shot on like a video camera and it was shot with like, even it was shot with film, but film didn't make it look the way necessarily that it does. People will say the film has an aesthetic. Yeah, okay, there's some texture, there's some grain there. But the reason it looks the way it does is because of lighting and the actors and the locations and the wardrobe and the makeup and the direction and like all the other stuff. And then they start shooting with like different cameras, like, oh, this was shot on Red, this was shot on Alexa, this was I got to shoot my project on that camera. It's like,
Yep.
You're missing the mark in terms of like what made that work. The camera was a part of it, but it was a very, very small part.
Right, absolutely. I think a lot of people unfortunately overlook that, or they look at it and they say, oh, I don't want to spend money on those things. I don't want to put part of the budget towards those things because I don't think they're relevant. Like, for example, something that I see a lot of people doing is they'll go outside, they'll set up a scene outside, and they won't have any diffusion. They won't have any sort of light modifier or anything to soften the light or to control the light outside. They're just thinking that the daylight is just going to give me what I want. And it's like, no, daylight is light. And no matter what light you're using, you need to control it to make your image look good. I think a lot of people forget that when we're talking about cameras. They just think the camera's going to make my image look good, when really the camera's the farthest thing from making your image look good. It's you that's going to make your image look good, your knowledge.
And that's why a lot of people who get really excited about low light cameras, like when the 5D Mark II came out and the 5D Mark III and the A7S and all these cameras that do well in low light, my response is always like, I hardly ever shoot in low light because I always have lights. I always have lights that I'm doing something with. I'm never, unless I'm filming like an event where it's like, you know, just like highlight footage, like a concert or, you know, like a club or that kind of environment, like people shoot that kind of stuff where you can't pop lights up, or maybe like a wedding where you don't want to make a big imprint. But like music videos, short films, corporate video, documentaries, feature films, like if you're not using lights and you're relying on the camera to do the heavy lifting because it does good in low light, you are missing the mark and your footage will never look as good as somebody who actually understands lighting. And that doesn't mean you need like 10 lights. Most of the time it's like 1 or 2 or 3. A lot of stuff that I shoot is just 1 or 2. And with maybe some like, you know, a bounce or some diffusion or whatnot. But it's like, you don't have to go crazy with it, but you got to understand it and realize that it's another big component of the process, just like audio is, just like all the other things we mentioned.
Yeah, Mako Sports is in the chat saying I'm looking forward to upgrading my equipment this year, and yeah, that's good because a lot of people they look at these, especially with like a company, I don't want to name drop, but a company that I really like is Aperture. It's like they're making lighting accessible for everybody because the prices are so cheap and the lights are great. It's not like they're crappy lights, you know, they're actually really good lights for the most part. Or any company that's selling lights at a reasonable price that's actually good quality, it's like, go spend your money on that. You know, if you've got a decent camera and you're not on a day-to-day basis shooting professionally, you should be, and you don't have lights, you should be making an investment into lighting more so than you should be looking and lusting after other cameras that you don't have.
And the thing that's cool about lighting is it's not as sexy, it's not as hot. So like there are the airy lights, and then even the aperture lights can be a little bit more expensive than what some people want. But like in film school, I went to Walmart and bought some fluorescent tubes and a makeshift like work light bank so I could have my homemade $20 Kino Flow light. And I popped it through diffusion, and you know what? That thing looked freaking awesome. And I knew that like if it broke or anything happened to it, you know, like the wind blows it over, whatever, it's not a big deal because I can always buy another one. It's not a problem. And you know, there's some limitations that come with that. You know, it can always be brighter, it can always be more versatile, but like it worked so well. And that's the thing that's cool about lighting is it doesn't take a lot to get started. You know, any new camera, like you can buy some used cameras, but you're still looking at maybe like $500. Yeah, there you go. Oh no,
I mean, this is so like jerry-rigged together.
No,
but
I've never bought those. I hate those clamps.
these are terrible. I hate this light. But if you don't have access to something like this can help you. You know, it can definitely at least be something that you can use, if not to learn anything else. So I don't think, again, I really think if we're on the topic of like, you know, what you really need and what you really don't need, it's like, and what you should learn and what you shouldn't learn. I think for people who are watching, if you're on the fence about whether or not you should upgrade, or if you're looking at the GH5 as something like, you know, again, that's going to make me better, that's going to make my footage better, really step back and take a look at, why am I getting the images that I'm getting right now? And if you're looking at it and you're saying it's lacking, well, what is lacking about it? Could it be the lighting? Could it be the sound? Could it be my manipulation of the camera settings? Do I not know what I'm doing? Those are all bigger questions to be asking yourself, rather than, do I have enough money to buy the latest and greatest camera?
Yeah, if you've got $2,000 to spend on a GH5, but you've got a GH4 or you've got another similar camera from like, let's say the same era, but you don't have lights, you don't have those other things, that $2,000 can go a long way getting you other stuff that you need. And I love having like my own like personal kit of stuff. Like over the years, I've collected some. I think it's funny. We keep like, each of us keep like pulling things from like off screen. Like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. Like we just have like gear piled around us. And
I know.
in effect, I kind of do, just because it's kind of all scattered around. I even took the time to like set up a light for doing this.
There you go.
So it's like, and not that it looks good. I don't know if it, you know, you can be the judge of that. My shirt's blown out, but like,
can't look any more worse than this guy. So
so like having that stuff on hand so you can do your personal stuff and then build your way up. Because the other thing I was going to say is that there is something to be said when working on client stuff about looking like you have professional equipment. So like if you were to show up at a client thing with that light you just showed me, you know, and I'm the client, I'm gonna look at you like, who did I just hire? Who is this
Yeah.
guy? Where did he get that? So like getting the cheapest stuff that you can get, but like making it look nice. Like I've talked about this in some of my videos I make, but just having a matte box, it can be a cheap $100 matte box, but just putting a matte box on your DSLR or hybrid mirrorless camera goes so far in terms of making it look like a proper rig. Having rails, get a cheap rail kit, get an external monitor of some kind, just build it out, make it look a little bit beefier. You know, stuff that's ideally probably like black. So it's not like a weird goofy neon, like something standing out that looks cheap or plasticky. But that kind of stuff, like having a good tripod, you know, like that's something that I think a lot of people don't consider. But if you have a set of sticks that's like pretty beefy and like professional looking, you can put a GH4 on that, rig it out with a proper kit, have the stuff to where like you don't even see the GH4 in there. You know what I mean? It's almost like hidden. It's this camouflage of like, I've made a professional looking camera out of something that you can buy at Best Buy. And that's the difference between like you go and you see people who shoot just with like a hybrid or DSLR on a set of sticks, and that's it. And then someone who has the kit and it's rigged out a little bit more. It takes more time. It's a little bit slower, but not significantly. From my experience, I don't think it's significantly slower. And the benefit you get with how you look and how you present yourself is so much more. So, you know, if it was down to like spending all your money on just the camera, or like, hey, save a couple of $100 to like get some accessories, definitely go that route, because I think you're going to just, the way you present yourself is gonna be so much more. It's just like the clothes you wear. It's just like, you know, the attitude you have and how you present yourself. There's a lot that's like the show package that you kind of need to incorporate if you want to be like a working professional and have a solid career doing this stuff.
Absolutely. And I've found so far in my career that when, you know, when you're working with clients, it's like these people are paying you money for a job, you know, and they expect professionalism. So showing up with just a GH5 might not be the best idea, depending on what job it is. You know, fully rigging it out.
Do I look professional? Do I look like a professional? I'm ready to shoot your video.
Especially
Smile.
GH5 strap on the camera. Yeah. That's just a sign of like, hey, rob me.
Like,
Rob
if anything, I look like a tourist. That's what I look like. I don't look like I'm ready to shoot video. I look like I'm a tourist who's just showed up and like stumbled into the wrong party.
Yeah, and I will say, I've experienced this too. It's like it's unfortunate, but it is something that happens when you show up on set and you don't look the part. It has a significant impact, and clients will you can definitely see it on the client's face. If you don't look the part and you're not, you know, you don't know what you're doing, it'll definitely show, and it'll prevent you from getting work in the future, you know? So, especially when it comes to like paid opportunities, you should really look at those as you're doing a job, you're professional just like anybody else. You know, it may not be a 9 to 5, but if you're going to treat it like a job and you're going to take money to do something, then you need to show up just like you would for any work, 9 to 5, show up to do the job, look professional, and do it professionally, you know?
Dress to impress. And that's not just about the clothes you're wearing. You got to dress to impress with everything. I think I cannot even count the amount of times, it's been so many, where even our smallest setup, we pop lights up, we got diffusion, we got a camera or two, we've got client monitor, we've got a microphone on a boom, we got stands, we've got bounces, we've got edge lights. We, you know, like we build out a scene, and it's like the smallest thing that you know, like it's not Hollywood, it's like an interview, but 9 times out of 10, oh my gosh, it's, you guys are professionals. You know, they're like so surprised and blown away because they see it, and it's like, it doesn't say Airy on it, it doesn't say red on it, but if you make it look good and you look like a professional, people take notice and they feel good about it, rather than feeling like, oh, like I just thought you were going to show up with a camera, because that's what most people see. They see people, you know, like at a wedding or wherever, they just have a camera and that's all they show up with. And then you show up with like a little bit more, like it's not a lot, It's just a little bit more, but it makes such a difference. And just the client's reassured, they feel like things are going to go well, and just that ease and calmness, because then it doesn't come, there's not this worry or this fear that like, oh, who did we hire? How's this going to turn out? It's like, oh, we hired professionals. Okay. Well, I trust them now. Like it just makes everything go so much more smooth if you look the part and you make that first impression really, really count.
Absolutely. And it also goes back to you as a shooter, going on a paid job, especially with a camera like the GH5. It's like, if you go onto a shoot and that experience is, really detrimental, bad for you, then that may actually turn some people off from wanting to continue and try to find work in other jobs. And so I feel like every job that you do, you really need to, again, look at as a professional, no matter how small or how big, and just treat it as such, because you don't know what could lead to other opportunities in the future. So and so could speak to so and so, which lands you a job in the future. I mean, that's how I worked on Indiana Jones and the King of the Crystal Skull, and because of that job, the first AD called me up to work on another job. And it was only because that I showed up, did what I had to do, did my due diligence, and was quiet, didn't ask questions, didn't pose a problem. I did what I was asked, got the job done, and he saw that and was like, yeah, this dude knows what he's doing. I want to get him on the next set, and I want to actually have him do some higher up work, so that, because I think he can handle it, and if he can do it, great, then we'll hire him for more work. So it really plays an integral part to your filmmaking experience, whether that's you just got a new camera or you are a well-seasoned pro. Treat every job as if it were your own job, and that you'd want to do the best that you could possibly do.
That's really good advice. What kind of stuff are you doing nowadays? Like, what kind of work do you do?
I actually shoot corporate videos, so that's one of the big things I've been doing. I actually just did a training video series for this company, and they're basically an architectural firm, and kind of related to what I do in my professional day-to-day work, which is I do construction photography and videography, and basically we do photo documentation and vetting, which is a building being built from start to finish. I go out and I take video and photos of that from start to finish for the client, and that's kind of what I do as like a day job. But on my side job for my independent production company, it's like I do corporate videos and music videos and a whole bunch of other things, and it's like, right now I find corporate videos work really well because they pay very well, and it's not like a narrative where you're taking a really, really long time. A corporate video turnaround is relatively quick depending on the job that you're doing. So I'm finding corporate work to be really cool. What about you?
It's a little bit of everything. So I work for a video marketing agency, video production company called Wirebuzz. So anyone who's like ever criticizing me on my, people are always asking like, show your work, show your work. You never show your work. How can we trust you that you're a professional? Most of the time it's client stuff. So I don't really want to like show it on YouTube, and like, usually it's like,
Too.
yeah, I don't think that's kosher. So, but if you wanted to go look up samples of stuff that I've done, the company's Wirebuzz. So there's a portfolio and you can put it all together if people are curious. But we do everything: commercials, explainer videos, testimonials, like Q&A videos. It's like, it really runs the gamut in the spectrum of like what makes sense for the client. And what's really cool is when I went to film school, it was right at like this sweet transition spot where I was going to film school and people were like, "Why, you're going to go make movies, or you're going to go make a TV show?" And I was looking at it like, that's really cool if that's what I do. But there's this thing called YouTube. There's this thing called the internet. There's this thing where like people are going to need videos way more than they ever needed them before. Because before it was, you're Hollywood, or you're like B-movie VHS tape, you're on TV as a commercial, or you're a local commercial. That was like pretty much it. Yeah, there was some like, make a DVD training series kind of stuff. But with the internet and with online video, it was like this light bulb went off of my head of like, people are going to need so much content. And we've seen that, like you're saying, corporate work like keeps you busy and that sustains you. It's like, yeah, because like every company needs video now. And a lot of people can shoot video on their iPhone. A lot of people can go buy a GH5 and shoot video, but are they going to do it well? And that's where like that talent and that skill comes in. And what I like to do is, even if it's like the most boring corporate job, figure out a way where I can deliver that quality. Maybe it's like the cinematic aesthetic, or it's just like cool sound design, or it's just clean sounding audio, something that gives it that quality and that professionalism that other people would probably like overlook and just be like, oh, that's, you know, it's just fine. It's just a training series, or it's just a presentation. It's like, no, how can you make this look the best that it absolutely can? Because then guess what? That's a good sample for you down the road for the next client, or like that client's really happy, they're satisfied, they want to do more work. And then those are kind of the steps you can take to kind of build yourself up. If you treat everything like it just doesn't matter because it's boring, or because it's, you know, not interesting to you, well, then it's that passion, that lack of passion is going to show in the final product. And it's probably not going to be as good as it could have been if you had really invested and cared about it and made it awesome. Cause like, I don't know about you, but like, there's a lot of people who'd be like, I'm just here to take photos of this building. There's some construction going on. I'm just going to snap some photos, get some video. But like, you can make that really, really cool if you're into it and you care about it, and you care about the client, and you care about the quality of your work. And I think that's really all it comes down to, is just being invested in yourself and your own career and the products you're putting out. I am so tied to like everything that like I produce, like that's got my name on it, my stamp of approval. I made this, and there's always going to be restrictions. Clients are always going to say like, we've only got this much money, we've only got these many days, we've only got this location, all the limitations. But how can you work within that? I made that video I posted just recently, you know, talking about those restrictions and how sometimes they can be really, really fulfilling creatively in terms of pushing your envelope, your box, expanding kind of the way you think about stuff. Restrictions are really, really rewarding sometimes.
Absolutely. I think anybody who's a filmmaker, I think, isn't that part of the, you know, job criteria as a filmmaker, is, you know, making really good images, not only with just what you have, but overcoming obstacles that you really wouldn't think would present themselves on the day of the shoot. To me, that is definitely part of being a filmmaker. A huge part is figuring out, how can I get this shot? How can I make it work with what I've got? And if I don't have what I need, what can I use that's available to me to actually get the shot? I feel like that is a huge part of what professionals do on a day-to-day basis. You know, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like going on to a corporate shoot, 9 times out of 10, you get to the location, it's like the location's not the most ideal thing. It's terrible. There's, you know, Wi-Fi all over the place, so you can't use, like, for example, I use the Rode Link wireless filmmaker kit, and I also have a pair of G3s, Sennheisers. So it's like going to places like that, I can't use the lavs, so now I got to use the G3s. But the G3s, they sometimes disconnect, and they make this like weird, like crazy staticky noise every once in a while. And then it's like the client, they have this horrible fluorescent lighting, and there's nothing that I could do about it because it's 50 feet up in the air, you know, and it's just so bright. You just kind of got to make it work, you know. And I feel like a lot of filmmakers, they don't look at that and say, this is what I need to do to get the job done. They just want to do it the quick and easy way. But for me, busting through that brick wall, I feel like, is a rewarding part of filmmaking. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I definitely find there are times where I'm like, all right, let's just get the shot. Let's just get it quick. But what I love about working in a team environment and having people around me is there's always somebody who's going to say like, well, why don't we set up a bounce? Why don't we set up diffusion? Why don't we do this? You know, it's like, yeah, we really should. We really should. Let's spend the extra couple minutes doing it right, doing it the proper way, rather than just rushing to get the shot, because sometimes you get in that mode on a shoot, on set, where you're not rushing, but there's like an urgency, a sense of like, we've only got till, you know, 5. We got to get these shots. We got to get these shots. We got to get these shots. And sometimes you just have to get the shots because time is restricted. But if you have the opportunity to do it right, always, 100% of the time, do it the right way. Spend that extra little bit of energy. It's like that last 5%, that last little bit of polish makes so much of a difference. And when you actually do that, it shows in the final product to a point where you're going to be glad that you did it, you know, after the fact. You're going to look at it and be like, oh, thank goodness we did that, rather than just like doing, you know, the cheap and easy way, or the quick and easy way, because that hardly ever turns out to a point where you're satisfied with the outcome.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree for sure.
Well, cool, man. We've been chatting for, I think, almost close to 2 hours. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
As far as the GH5 is concerned, um, I just again just want to reiterate for people watching, it's like the camera is a camera and it's got tons of features, and I love what you call it bells and whistles, and it's so true because that's what a lot of those features are. They're just bells and whistles, and it's like don't look at it as the next latest and greatest big thing that I need to own. Look at it as a tool that you can use should you need it. It's at your disposal. And I like what you do. You rent. A lot of people don't rent and they don't see the value in renting. They don't see the value in trying before you buy. And unfortunately, that's something that I think a lot of people should really consider, because you would see a lot less of people going, making purchases, and then like you said at the beginning of this live stream, it's like people online are going online, returning the camera, or going, oh, it's not working for me. Oh, I can't stand it because it's not what I wanted. And it's like, try before you buy. If you can't, try to find the most reliable reviews that you can. Yes, reviews can be biased, reviews can be one-sided, but reviews can also be helpful. They can show you an item that you may have interest in that you're not able to see, you may not be able to get your hands on, but you can at least hear the opinion of one person who has used it extensively. At least they might say they've used it extensively, but you can at least get an opinion and then internalize that and see whether or not that opinion is not only valid, but whether or not that's something that you can apply to your everyday thinking in terms of whether or not I need to or want to upgrade to something better. If you don't have a camera, would I recommend getting the GH5 as your first camera? Maybe not. I feel like it's it might be a little bit too advanced for beginners. But then again, for me, when I was first getting started, and not to backtrack on what I said about just going out and buying a red. For me, when I started, I obviously wanted the best and greatest thing, but at the time, the 5D Mark II, it was like, that may have not been the best and greatest thing, but it was the thing I had access to. So it was the thing that I made work and was what I learned on, And anyone thinking about buying the GH5, it's like, just weigh your options before you do. Weigh your options, take a look at what it can do, take a look at what it can't do, and see if that really matters to you and the style that you shoot. Especially, especially new filmmakers who really want to get into it, but they don't know anything about anything, so they just kind of take people's word for it. But do what Strauss does: rent if you can. If you can't, then try your best to see if there is true value in what you are looking to get. What do you think? What do you think you're going to do as far as looking at all your options as far as the GH5 is concerned? Do you think you can come to a decision yet?
I haven't come to a decision yet, and I probably won't until I have a shoot where I need it. Like right now with the Ursa Mini and the GH4s, that's working really well. But the shoot that comes where it's like, oh, I need X feature that the GH5 has, it's like, okay, well, I'll probably rent a couple. Or if it's like, oh, we have a lot of these shoots coming up and I'm going to need that feature consistently, well, then I'll buy one or I'll buy two. I'm going to wait though until it's like that need is there, because if I buy it now and then the A7S Mark III comes out or something, it's like, and that's what I'm constantly telling people is like, you want it and you think you need it, but like, do you really need it? Because I don't have a shoot tomorrow that like I need it. Like I rented it for myself, for my personal testing, like to see what it can do. But yeah, there's no, unless there's a need for it, don't buy it.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's funny, I don't know, you mentioned, biased reviewers. I don't think anyone's ever accused me of being biased. If you've accused me of other things, you called me names, but never biased. It's weird. I don't know how Panasonic picks their luminaries or whatever they're called, because I don't know. I've been shooting I actually got the GH1, hacked it back in the day when everyone was shooting on the 5D Mark II. Everyone had the 5D Mark II. That was the camera to get. And everyone was like, this is the best thing ever. And I was like, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. Like what? Like I need something cheaper. Oh, there's this $600 camera I can get on eBay and I can hack it to make it good. All right, that sounds like a fun little game. Sign me up. I'm ready. And you know what? That freaking GH1 was so much better than the 5D Mark II because I like my other people I was around were shooting on the 5D Mark II. I ended up working with a company where they had 5D Mark IIs. And I'm like, this resolution is terrible. Like it says it's 1080, but it's not 1080. And like to this day, I still fight with people about that. Like I made videos on my channel talking about how the 5D Mark III isn't even a 1080p camera, and that GH1 was like had more resolution in it, and I could do because on the Mark II, I don't think you could even do 720/60, could you?
No.
Yeah, and yeah, I could do that on the GH1. It's like so I had the GH1 really got me to where I am now. Like even considering the GH5, I think a lot of people kind of jumped on the Panasonic ship with the GH4 because of the 4K and all that stuff. But like I was already there. I told my buddy, I was like, the GH2, you should get the GH2. You can hack it and make it awesome. He got one. We shot on that a bunch. I skipped the GH3 because that one seemed like a little not a necessity.
Yeah.
But then GH4 and now GH5, it's like they've come so far and they've done so much. And what I'm saying is they really should be paying me to say all this, but they're not. And that's what's unfortunate about it. No, I don't know if I would take the money. I think that like inherently it makes it has to affect what you do and what you say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
I and you could put as many disclaimers as you want on it, but you're still that exchange of money, that relationship, I think is a little problematic for me.
Yeah, especially it's difficult because if you're again, not to name names, but there is a Sony artisan of imagery that is extremely popular on YouTube and social media. I'm sure some people know who he is, and I like his content. It's good, but it's like some of the things that he says, you really got to take in for anybody for that matter, whether it's a Canon Explorer of Light or a Nikon Ambassador or a Lumix Luminary. It's like you really can only take their word so far because, like you said, there is an exchange of money there, and whether or not you want to believe that they're being as truthful as possible, you have to remember that these people are representing a company, not just one person, a giant company, a corporation. So they don't always have to not speak their mind, but they definitely have to watch what they say. And that is true for anybody who is sponsored by any company. If we take a look at what's going on with YouTube right now, YouTube itself is in hot water for some of the things that have recently happened, with the ads and everything, and some of the sketchy content that's been being uploaded, and marketing agencies not wanting to support some of that content or be associated with it. It's like it's kind of the same thing. It's like you just got to understand. You got to separate fact from what appears to be truth, and kind of going back to what we were talking about the video this morning, which is now technically yesterday morning. Well, for you, I think it's actually not yesterday morning yet, but for me it is.
Yeah, but it's getting close.
But going back to what we were saying, it was like this morning was good because it was good to see those two working things out, but at the same time, it's like, again, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Whatever anybody says, I mean, as far as I know, Max has been like one of the most honest reviewers that I've seen on YouTube. Him and like a few others, and you yourself have been some of the most honest reviewers on YouTube. And I feel like this platform gives us the opportunity to tell the truth and to let everybody know what we think about certain things. And I feel like, again, validity is something that we need to take a big look at and say whether or not we should listen to what some of these people are saying. And if we are listening to it and we are taking it into consideration, we have to put it in the pot and kind of just put it all of our thoughts and everything in there and kind of stir it up and see the end result, whether or not it's something that you think is going to benefit you in the long run, no matter what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah. Do you watch Max's content?
I do. And I will say he gave me some flack for the white seamless in my last video, but I will say, although he's not like getting super scientific, and I mean I've seen other camera reviewers who are actually DPs in the industry who took certain cameras and they've done actual scientific testing with it, light meters and spectrometers and a whole bunch of colorimeters and a whole bunch of other things, and they've gone really in depth with it. But as far as I'm concerned, I think he's doing a great job with some of the content that he's been putting up, because again, it shows some of the shortcomings that this camera in particular has. And I think a lot of people are scared to say the truth, and it's refreshing, at least for me, to see somebody do that.
Yeah. Do you watch Photo Joseph at all? Have you been watching his stuff?
I have been watching Photo Joseph probably about the last month and a half. I've been it's funny, I've been in the chat room. Every time I go in the chat room, everyone's like, oh, Sully's here, it's not a show without Sully. And it's like it's really funny because there's some really cool people that continuously go in these chats, so it's a great community. But yeah, as far as Photo Joseph is concerned, I've only recently been watching his stuff. What do you think about some of his stuff?
So I've been following Max for quite a while, and I don't watch all of his content, but I do watch the ones that like interest me. Like I haven't really watched like the Hackintosh stuff that he's done.
Yeah.
But like some of the other camera stuff, I'm definitely more interested in. Photo Joseph, I came across recently, with the GH5 being a thing. I'm not as familiar with his content. I just don't know. Do you know much about his background, like how he became a luminary? Like what?
I don't know much about his background. I know he said that he was shooting with Canon and Nikon, so he's been a professional photographer for a while. I think he said like well over 15 years or something like that. So
he's photo focused, right? Not necessarily video.
He is specifically photo focused, and I think only recently, I could be wrong, he'll probably correct me, I'm sure, but I think he also does shoot video as well, professionally. So I think he's done a couple projects. Yeah.
Okay, because yeah, I mean I appreciated their Max and Joseph's conversation this morning, kind of being nice with one another, and like and like obviously like that's how it is. Like you talk to somebody face to face, that's a lot harder to be a jerk about it than when you're just calling someone out in a YouTube video. But what I didn't necessarily like, he initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Photo Joseph made it initially sound like Max was just doing it for the clicks.
The high view count, I think, is what he said in this text in the video.
Yeah, like you've got to actually test things to like really know that like you got to be a professional and you can't just slap it together. Like that was kind of the mentality of like he's just putting this thing out to get clicks, to cause controversy, and like Max clearly hadn't done that, and I don't think Max is the kind of guy who's like putting out stuff just for clicks. At least that's not the content I've seen from him. But what's bothers me about it, for as nice as they were and everything, like Photo Joseph's content does seem to be more for clicks. Like he's made so many GH5 videos, and I don't know how much of that's tied to the luminary thing. I'd love to talk to him about it and ask him about it. Like I reached out to him this morning saying like, hey, we should do a live stream. And he was like, oh, tune into mine, And so I did, and I showed up, but his list of videos is just like GH5, 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 like one little app thing, GH5, GH5, GH5. And it's like, so you're like, how much is there to really talk about the GH5, like this frequently, right when it's coming out? You're a luminary, and I don't know how I got the luminary thing, because like he doesn't have that many subscribers on YouTube. I think he's technically less than I do.
Yeah,
and I don't think like I don't think Panasonic's in any position to be giving me the luminary thing either. Like they should use it for people who are a little bit bigger, I would think, but maybe they don't want it. I don't know. So it's just there's something about it that like kind of bugs me a little bit. And I think he's walked a few of his statements back. He's kind of, you know, apologized maybe a little bit for some of his test stuff, but just the way that interaction started seemed like not maybe disingenuous. I don't know how to describe it. It was just odd because like Max is not that guy, but I don't know who Photo Joseph is.
Yeah, no. It definitely, when I saw Max's video last night, I definitely got the impression, I was like, wow, he seems actually really distraught, like legitimately feels like alienated and kind of had the finger pointed at him, you know, like poking fun of his shit. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know much about Photo Joseph other than the fact that I do watch his live show. And okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just reading what's in the chat. So I mean, I don't know that much about Photo Joseph, his background, or how he became a luminary, or, you know, what's truth and what's not truth, and is he doing all these GH5 videos just for clicks and whatnot. It definitely, I will agree, it definitely does seem that way. If you look at his channel, literally so many GH5 videos is not even funny. I mean, he is a Lumix luminary, so it does make sense, you know, that he would be promoting Panasonic's material. And but I feel like Panasonic, it's weird because I feel like this is the only time. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it happens during every camera release, but I feel like we're living in a time that camera companies are reaching out to like YouTubers, almost like they're rock stars, and trying to get them to jump on board with them so that they can catapult their product to the mainstream. And Panasonic is smart because I don't see any other company really doing this. Maybe with the exception of Sony, they may have had a video on like a B&H's video or YouTube channel. But like, I see them going after guys like Griffin Hammond or Newman Films, or, you know, people. These are people that got their start on YouTube and that kind of blew up because of YouTube. So I feel like they're really targeting, you know, YouTube specifically in the YouTube community, because I feel like they see that it's a great market for them to market their material. And I feel like Photo Joseph is one of those channels that, not only because he's a luminary, but because he shoots Panasonic, it's a vehicle for them, again, to catapult their GH5 content into the mainstream without actually doing it through their own channels. You know what I mean? Like, they have their own channel. It's like Lumix Camera or something like that.
Yeah, and it's purely information, and it's
exactly.
It's all right. I'm subscribed, but I don't.
It's Matt Frazier in front of the camera talking about, you know, specifics of the camera. It's really funny because it's like so badly done, but it's cool because it's informative, you know, and
yeah,
it'll definitely help people who are you know, getting used to the camera. But it's like, you clearly don't see them putting that much emphasis on those channels versus a channel like Photo Joseph's, where they don't really have to put much emphasis because he's putting all the emphasis for them. You know what I mean? Kind of like he's almost like they're. It's not like he keeps using the word shill, which I think is really funny. It's just a funny word, but I don't think he's a shill by any means. I think he legitimately thinks that he's, you know, trying to convey the truth and trying to be as truthful as possible. And I don't think he's, you know, getting paid by Panasonic and just going, oh, I'm just going to say what Panasonic wants to hear. I think he kind of made that evident, you know, in this morning's live stream. But I definitely do agree with you as far as taking everything he says at full face value. I don't know if I could honestly do that. I'm kind of in the same boat that you are.
Well, and it's not that, like, I'm not blaming him and like saying that he's a bad guy. I just, like, anytime, and it's not just about companies paying people either. Like, you having purchased the GH5 puts you in a different mindset and a mentality than me, who just rented it, or someone who, like, someone gave it to them, you know, or someone who, like, it got shipped by a company for free. Like, there's so many different ways that you can, or like someone who, I don't know, like shoots on the A7S and they're like forced to use it. Like, I forced them to use it for a shoot because they're coming along on my project. I'm like, you have to shoot on the GH5. That person who's coming from the A7S is going to have a different perspective as well. So, like, and it's not conscious decisions. It's just the way that our brains are wired and how we kind of like filter through content. So like, I know that like me personally, like I bought a GH4 when it came out, and me buying it made me more biased towards it than an A7S. And so like there are reasons that I can justify in my mind why I don't want the A7S and I prefer the GH4. But like the person who bought the A7S can do the exact inverse. And that's why when I made the video of like people who pick the GH4 are probably going to stick with the GH4 and go with the GH5, and people who pick the A7S are probably going to stick with that and go with the A7S2 or the A7S3. It's like you kind of, Canon and Nikon, any fanboyism, it's like we don't want to do it, but it almost happens inevitably just because we make decisions. And unless you have an infinite amount of wealth where you can just buy everything and it doesn't really matter, which that's very, very rare, you're going to have some kind of skewing, some kind of bias. So definitely putting all that information out there so people can like know how to judge it is valuable. So I try and be as transparent with that stuff as possible, and I try to be as unbiased as possible, look at things objectively, but like there's still something like inherent to when you make a decision, you commit to something, like you are picking it, you're picking it over something else, and then you have to like justify why you did that. And like it's totally subconscious, but like I don't know that there's a way to like turn that switch off.
Yeah, I mean, see, I play both sides of the fence. I own Sony cameras and I own Panasonic cameras. So it's not like I'm tied into one specific brand. And I've shot with Canon. I haven't really shot with Nikon that much. I think I only did once, but
Don't worry, you're not missing out.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with that company, but or their cameras for that matter. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's really tough. It's a tough call. I don't know. As far as like again, and yeah, Z3 Tracks is saying, if I'm not mistaken, I think Photo Joseph had some big corporate shoot with BMW. That's actually the reason why I'm pretty sure, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that's the reason how and why he became a luminary. He was actually shooting with Canon, and they were doing a photo shoot of some car over a bridge. And the thing that actually turned him on to shooting with Lumix cameras, Panasonic, was that he could turn the LCD screen. It wasn't fixed to the back of the camera. And so one of the shots that they were doing was over a bridge, holding out a long stick with the camera attached to it and having the car go under, under an underpass, and having it shoot straight down as the car is flying by. That's like one of his biggest videos on his channel. And he says that that's the reason that he switched from Canon to Nikon. Now, whether or not that's the reason that he became a luminary, I'm not sure. Again, don't quote me on that, but
Do you mean Canon to Lumix?
Yeah, Canon. Why did I say something else? Yeah,
Canon and Nikon, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Canon to Lumix. Yeah, he was shooting with Canon, used Panasonic Lumix camera on that particular shoot, and then became a luminary pretty much after that. I don't know how long after that. I don't know if that was the reason why or how he became a luminary, but yeah, that was the shoot that turned him on to Lumix cameras. So
interesting. Is Griffin a luminary as well?
Griffin, I don't think Griffin's a luminary, to be honest. In fact, I don't think there's that many luminaries to begin with at all. In fact, I think there's only like 5 to 10, if that, 5 to 8. There's a Lumix Lounge website, and I haven't actually been to it, but
unfortunately, it's service unavailable right now. I like tried clicking over because I did a Google search for Lumix luminaries, and oh, hey, it's working, but I don't know. Yeah, because I'm like Griffin's videos, like he does stuff on the GH5 every once in a while, but it's he does other stuff too.
He does, and Griffin is one of those guys that he's a doco shooter. He goes out and he shoots documentaries, and that's just what he does. Okay, video photos MX says yes, Griffin is a Lumix luminary. He's one of those guys that goes out and shoot. If you don't know who he is, he's one of those guys that goes out and does doco work, documentary. And,
yeah, he did the Sriracha documentary, right?
He did, and I love that documentary. I thought it was great. And he also just did the recent documentary, Chilled or Ice or Frozen. I forget what it was called, but it was it was an example of the 4K 60 frames per second that the Panasonic GH5 is known for now.
It really bugged me that that video was displayed at 60 frames per second.
Yes, it bugged me too. A lot of people don't like the look of 60 frames per second. I am definitely one of those people. I do not like the way it looks. I don't know. Maybe it's just that there's extra frames in there. I honestly don't know what it is, but it just bugs me.
It works really well. Like for video games, I'm all about it. Looks great. But anytime I am at someone's house and they're watching TV and they have the 120 hertz feature on, I'm like, this, I got to fix this for you. I go into the menu, I turn it off. It just happened to be the other night on one of my TVs. I switched the HDMI input, and that HDMI input had it set to like that. They call it like film motion or movie motion or some stupid thing.
LED motion, or yeah, I know what you're talking about.
This looks terrible. And yeah, Griffin's saying it's like, ooh, cutting ice at 60 frames a second. Cool. I'm expecting like slow motion, like ice chunks and stuff. And then it's like, nope, this like really like fast, awkward, like I don't want to see 60 frames a second video. It looks like video. It looks bad. Didn't they stop doing the Hobbit that way? They did the first one, and then like the other two, they were just like, forget about it.
Yeah, I think it was 48 frames per second, but yeah, it's kind of just awkward. Just no, it just doesn't look right. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's just that we're so used to 24 that that's just what we want to see. Like natively, that's what our eyes want to see. I don't know.
I don't know the science of it, but I definitely know it's one of those things that like I think there's a lot of people who are like casual viewers, like you just your regular generic person. They never notice, but I think they do subconsciously. Because I'm like when they displayed The Hobbit at 48, like there were stories, and I don't know if it was overblown. I didn't see it that way, but people were like, "Oh, I got sick. I was really disorienting watching a film like that." And it could be that it's kind of just trained in us because we've been seeing stuff that way for so long. My goodness, what's that?
Sorry.
Didn't like our conversation.
I just got an Amber Alert on my phone. That's not too good, but
I turned those off because that's a nightmare sound.
Yeah, that scared the hell out of me. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. But yeah, I don't know what the scientific reason for it would be, but I know that it looks bad. even 30 frames. I was just watching Dave Chappelle's new stand-up specials on Netflix. Yeah. And the first one, I don't know have you seen them?
I didn't. it's in my queue, so probably gonna go watch it after this.
You gotta watch them. Really good. The first one was shot. I don't recall where it was shot, but it looks really nice. Good stage lighting, nice camera movement. It looks very good. The second one, not as good, but also displayed at 30. At least this is how it's playing back on my television. The first one was like playing back 24. The second one was playing back at 30, and just like instantly I was like, I can't watch this. It looks cheap. It looks bad. And I wouldn't watch the first one again because I liked it, and I watched it again, and it looked good. I still got to watch the second one, but I only made it like 5 minutes just because of the frame rate.
Yeah, I don't know. Frame rate. Somebody said it looks so Discovery Channel-ish. Yeah, I mean, the frame rate, again, is one of those things where it's like, and Max said this too, and I totally agree with him. He's like, I shoot everything at 24, and I totally agree. Personally, if we could be shooting at true 24 all the time, that would be great, because then you wouldn't have things like sync issues with audio when you're shooting sync sound. But I don't know. There is science behind it, I'm sure, but I don't know. I hate the look of 60 frames per second played back in real time. I hate the look of 48 frames per second played back in real time. 24 to me is the way it's always been. It's the way it should be. And I think, at least for me, for my filmmaking purposes, I would only use 30, 48, 60, 180, 240, whatever for slow motion work. I would never really use it just to showcase those extra frames, because I think that's a waste. I think you're kind of wasting that footage, and you could put it to better use if you were to slow it down and let everybody soak in all of the details if you're shooting at that high frame rate,
Yeah, the only use case I could think of for it is if there was some kind of VR that you were doing, some kind of, where if someone turns their head and they're looking at like some kind of virtual reality video, I think seeing it at 24 would be choppy, having maybe I haven't tested it enough myself or like had enough experience with it, but I could imagine wanting the higher frame rate, just like with like video games and stuff, because it's not real. There's just like I'm cool with the look. Like I like watching animated movies, like Pixar movies, at the higher refresh rates. I think they look better that way. But anytime it's like live action people, it looks really weird. And no, it can't be that. But then on the flip side of that, if you look at like anime and cartoons that are at an even lower frame rate, you know, like 12 or 15 frames per second, that almost has like a look that I enjoy and appreciate as well.
Yeah, that is weird. I do know what you're talking about.
Like I just saw Ghost in the Shell last weekend, and like seeing what they're clearly taking like anime style frames and looks and translating it to video or film, there's almost like a weird disconnect where like it looks better as the anime. For me, like just looking at the style frames, like Ghost in the Shell, the live action Scarlett Johansson film, static frames look awesome. You start making it move and it looks weird to me, and I don't know why. It's probably all just psychological.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Somebody in the chat says, I think we're used to 24 for cinema TV. Anytime it's 30 or 60, it looks like a soap opera.
Is it
Yeah.
possible? And then he says, is it possible to make a 60 frames per second run at 24 frames per second real time in post?
Well,
I
yeah,
think
that would be 50% slow-mo. If you were,
well,
if you were to run.
you can conform it, or you can just drop the frames out either way. So like you could play back 60 at 24, but your shutter speed is likely wrong. That would be a
Yeah,
problem. So like that's why, like, you know,
that's why you should use shutter
well, but even if you use shutter angle, if you're shooting it at 60 and you put it in like a 24 frames timeline without conforming it, you still have the motion blur of
angle. Oh,
60.
yeah. I see what you're
So
saying.
like that's why it's really important. Like I struggle with this sometimes where like I want to shoot some stuff slow motion, but I also maybe want to play it back real time too. So like you really have to pick and be careful, because the shutter speed does matter. And you know, because if you're going to slow it down, you have to have that higher shutter speed. If you're going to play it back real time, it's got to be a little bit lower so it matches. And so it's like you really kind of have to commit to these decisions, and you can't necessarily have the best of both worlds, unless I think you could probably do it with Red and their HDRX mode.
I was just going to say the HDRX, yeah.
Yeah, I think you could technically capture both, because I think they did that for The Hobbit, where like they had
The dual frame capture, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, you can. I conform 60 to 24 all the time. You said like you and Max was saying he shoots everything at 24. I mean, anything that I need sound for, I'll shoot at 24, so the sound is synced. But anything that doesn't necessarily need sound, I'll usually shoot at 30 and conform it down just for a little bit of a slow-mo, or I'll shoot 60, or I'll shoot 120. I love kind of over cranking and getting that slow motion effect when it applies and makes sense for the job.
Absolutely. And the GH5, like the GH4, is great for that, especially that it goes up to 180 frames per second. You know, have you played with the slow motion on the GH5 yet? I've messed with it a little bit, and I'm noticing that the 1080, when you get to, well, at least in my experience so far, when you get to 120 frames per second, it almost looks like it goes from 1080 to 720. And then everything beyond 120 up to 180 literally looks like 720. Have you played with it at all yet?
I haven't personally played with it, but I have heard that, so that resonates with other things I've heard, where the super high frame rates are a step down in quality, just like on the GH4 when you switch to that 96 frames per second mode, your quality took a hit. It's unfortunate that that's the case. I can understand kind of why it's the case. But yeah, like having 720p quality footage, like aside from watching it on a smartphone, really stands out. At work, I have an iMac display that's 5K, and like even the like watching 1080 stuff on there is awful.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's
It looks
really
terrible.
hard, because like I want it to fill the screen, but now those pixels are so dense that I don't have the detail there. And I'm looking at stuff, I'm like, why does this look like trash? Oh, it's 1080. I switched to the 4K stuff and I'm like, ooh, beautiful. Like this looks really nice. But with the GH4, you couldn't shoot, high frame rate stuff. at 4K. So that is for me is a big draw on the GH5 is having that 4K 60. So I'm really curious to see if Sony incorporates that, because that would be the one feature that if they don't have on their upcoming cameras from Sony, would definitely easily make me pick the GH5 over it, because it's enough of a feature that the extra dynamic range of the Sony I would sacrifice for the frame rate options, plus all the other options and features that you get with the GH5, just because it's so video focused and video specific.
Yeah, I know this is primarily about the GH5 that we're talking about, but I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. So again, for those of you watching who've just joined, I bought the GH5. Strauss has not bought the GH5. He's rented it. So I want to get your opinion. What are you looking forward to potentially what Sony is going to be releasing with the A7S III and A7R3?
Potentially. I have very little faith in Sony that they're going to do what I actually want, but hey, things can happen. I am looking forward to it because I do appreciate the flexibility that full frame gives you. I'm not about just getting like the shallowest depth of field as possible. I want things in focus, but I like the flexibility in terms of field of view and having that control over depth of field, the low light especially, because even though I was talking about low light before and it like not being a key feature for me, which is why I picked the GH4 over the A7S. I guess that's kind of a misnomer. I didn't pick the GH4 over the A7S. I just was happy that I had purchased the GH4 before the A7S came out.
Right.
I was glad with my purchase. But being able to do like opening up nighttime and being able to do better time lapse of stars and stuff like that has me intrigued. But Sony has some fundamental stuff that they have to change about those cameras for me to really be convinced that it's going to be usable for what I need.
Dear
So
God, that battery life needs to go.
the battery life, the form factor, I'm not a fan of. The screen, like they're I think for some people they're small things, like people who've bought into that system, it doesn't bug them as much. But for me, having the proper articulating screen that like flips out and rotates all the way around and like having that flexibility rather than like this like swivel screen, I guess, it's like the Sony stuff. It's just, they need to change that stuff because it will actually make their product better. It's not just a preference thing. Like 100% it will make the product better.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, there are some things personally, in my personal opinion, if Sony were to come out in, I don't know if you know this, but I've mentioned this in many other videos of mine, that Sony has purposely limited not only the codec, but has purposely limited the HDMI output of all of their alpha cameras. They only output 8-bit. They only do 8-bit 422 max. And I don't know if that's because they want to protect their higher end FS5, FS7, so on and so forth. But if they were to put the majority of the big bells and whistles that the GH5 has into the A7S III, and it had the low light capability that the A7S II does, maybe with a little bit better dynamic range, a little bit better higher ISO capability, I don't know, man. I feel like with the phase detect autofocus, the other bells and whistles that it has, they improve the stabilization. I think the A7S III could really give the GH5 a run for its money if it's got all of the right implementations, especially overheating and quality control. That's like a huge thing.
So before I respond to that, so V's asking, do you usually shoot in 4K but edit in 1080? Yes, I do. That's typically how I deliver stuff is in 1080 because most of the clients, that's what they want. That's what they can handle. But I'm not opposed to delivering in 4K either. It just depends on the project. Back to what we were talking about. The reason I made the videos I made talking about the GH5 having a bigger sensor size and upgrading is because the two camps that I think are the most competitive, like Canon aside, Fuji, Olympus, Nikon, they're all kind of playing a different game, but really most people like me and you are looking at Sony and they're looking at Panasonic. Sony has so many things that they need to incorporate to compete with the features that people who like the GH5 or the GH4 that they want. You know, small things, little things. Like, I don't know, can you on the Sony cameras, can you do time lapses internally?
Nope, you have to buy an app.
So you can do it internally, but it's an app that you have to add in through firmware. That's right. My brother has like an A6300. I think I remember him telling me that. But like
$10 app, by the way.
It's like, why give it away for free? But then like Panasonic, you could say the same thing about Vlog. So Sony's got all of these little features that are so handy and so useful that if they're gone, like if you give that up on the GH4, the GH5, and you switch, you miss them so much. And they've got so much to add into those Sony cameras to get them up to speed. Panasonic only has a couple things that they need to do to make them like truly competitive. The problem is those things are some of the biggest fundamental changes that they would have to make. Everyone looking at the GH5 from the Sony camp is saying, I love it, 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 except that sensor is too small. Sensor's too small. Not enough.
And autofocus. And autofocus.
And autofocus. And autofocus now, yeah. But like, those are the things that are huge upgrades, you know, like even if Sony had better autofocus, but Panasonic was competing with like a Super 35 sensor or a full frame sensor, I think the conversation would be a lot more even, right? People would look at all the video features on the GH5 and they'd say, oh yeah, I want to go over, I'll lose the autofocus, but I'm not really sacrificing anything in terms of dynamic range and sensor size. And so that's why I made those videos. Like, if Panasonic wants to get that new business, they have to change some fundamental things about the way they're making cameras, or they're never going to have it. And maybe they're okay with that. Maybe it doesn't matter. Sony, on the other hand, they've got a lot more steps to implement. They're probably easier to put in, but they're probably also really hesitant to, because then, like you said, they're competing with their pro end, and Panasonic seems less interested in that. I'm sure they care, but it seems like the teams are actually separate, and the Lumix division can just do kind of whatever they want and make their camera awesome, kind of regardless of what's happening at the pro high-end stuff. Sony seems much more intimately involved, where they've got to limit and handicap things just to protect their market, which is why Canon does the same thing.
Canon, yep.
And that's why I shit on Canon all the time, because they're although they are updating the Mark IV. Did you see there's a firmware update coming out?
1.27 times crop. I did see that. It's very interesting.
So it's like, oh, they're actually fixing it and making it the way people would probably want it. Huh, I wonder why they're doing that. I wonder if they've not sold enough. Huh, I wonder if they... Who talks about the Mark IV? I've shot with the Mark IV. Have you shot with it?
I rented it. I did rent it, and I shot with it for one photo shoot. And personally, I did not see anything that I was liking. I don't know if he's still watching, but I'm gonna quote Peter Gregg here. I cannot stand being in MJPEG jail. That was the #1 thing for me. I hate that freaking codec. Literally the worst codec, archaic thing that it is. Why they ever decided to throw it in there is honestly beyond me. But I didn't mind the crop as much as everybody was blowing it up. Only because I was coming from Micro Four Thirds, so I already deal with a 2 times crop. And for me, that's not really a big deal. For a lot of people, I could understand you're buying a $3,000, I don't know what the price was, but I'm going to say $3,000 plus dollar camera. And it's full frame and it claims to do 4K. You're expecting it to do 4K full frame, but for that price, it doesn't do it. It's like, why? And not only that, but the thing that really bugged me about it for filmmakers is, why would they not let you do 4K out of the HDMI? That literally blew my mind, that they would limit it like that. That guy that made that call, and the guy at Panasonic that made the shipping the Vlog and the stupid little blue strip box, Both of those guys should be fired, seriously.
Yeah, I rented the Mark IV as well, and there are some fundamental flaws with that camera, but there's also some flaws that they're now coming around to fixing, like not having a log profile.
Mm.
Why am I shooting these enormous files with this amazing color if I can't really adjust it, you know, if I don't have that log flexibility? Why am I buying a full frame camera that can't shoot full frame or even close to full frame video? You get a wider field of view on the GH4 with a speed booster, if I'm not mistaken. So there are some like, and that's just like mud on Canon's face, because they were like, oh, full frame, full frame, full frame. Everyone's like, oh, the Mark II, the Mark III, full frame, full frame. And it's like, oh, now you want to shoot video, these enormous file sizes. Who wants to deal with that? And then just like the little stuff too, like the screen doesn't flip out. Battery life was all right. Autofocus, a lot significantly better, but I don't see people talking about the Mark IV for video just because they missed the mark so far. And I don't think it's like they were so close, but yet so far away. You know, the stuff like just put a better HDMI port on it. You know, let us get 4K out of this thing. Let us, you know, yeah, you're not gonna have a flip out screen. I get that, but like let's have not as much of a crop. And the thing is, that's kind of even more frustrating to me, because I made a rant video at the time when it came out, and just like, man, this is really what you're expecting these video people to use. And then everyone being like, well, it's a photo camera, it's not a video camera. I'm like, okay, then whatever. But now they're coming around and changing it all, adding log in, reducing the crop, getting the file sizes down, like doing all these fixes. It's like, why didn't it ship that way? What was the internal decision making over at Canon that said like what they put out was good enough? Because they didn't even put out like a roadmap either. It wasn't like Panasonic where they're like, hey, this stuff's coming, we're going to add it, we're sorry, you know, we wanted to get it out so you guys could start using it and we could just get some bugs to work out. It's like, no, they shipped like a product that was done, and then they're like, ooh, all those features we could have done, we now have to do to increase market share again and get back out there and get people talking about it like we are now. So maybe we're playing right into their hand. I don't know. But I really think that stuff is so frustrating. I mean, I saw just the other day that like Magic Lantern unlocked 4K on the Mark III.
Yeah, I mean, how many years has the Mark III been out? You know, and my God, 4K on the Mark III. It doesn't even shoot 1080. How are you going to get 4K out of it?
So I don't, this kind of crippling, intentionally handicapping cameras, just why? So they can come out with another one in 3 years that's upgraded? Why? So they can protect their professional market? Like, I think that nowadays with the way technology is advancing and stuff, it's like that you can't do that stuff anymore. You've got to actually put something out that's good and competitive and high quality. And that's why I really appreciate, again, going back to Blackmagic, what they've been doing. Like every one of their cameras has caused insane buzz. You know, every year at NAB when they're revealing some brand new thing that's like, oh, it does what? And it's how much? Holy cow. Like, yeah, sign me up. I want to buy it. And you get all these pre-orders and then they can't fill it and they kind of, you know, fail on the back end. But at least the concepts of what they're coming out with, they're essentially doing, you know, like their competitors are the Chinese manufacturers like Kinefinity and stuff. And you think of like, those are like no-name brands, like Chinese made. Like I think there's kind of like that's like, some people might think that's like kind of derogatory or like it's inferior, right? But like Blackmagic is actually making like products that work somewhat. I've had some issues with the Ursa Mini, but like I said, they've actually been very helpful in terms of sorting all that out. And their competitor is like the Chinese knockoff stuff. You know what I mean? It's like such a weird place for them to be. And the fact that they keep doing it every year, I don't know if they're making money. I hope they are, but it's pretty cool to see them doing it, because that's kind of like the mentality that I think Red came to the market with back in the day when it was like cinema cameras were $100,000 and they're like, hey, ours is 20, you know,
Yeah,
like that's the mentality we need to keep moving forward. And unfortunately, I think companies like Red lose sight of that a little bit. Maybe that makes them super profitable. I don't know their business, but it's it's definitely cool to see the Blackmagics and the Panasonics of the world like kicking ass with their cameras, because they really, when the GH5 was announced, I think like people were genuinely surprised, I think, with the amount of features they packed into it.
Oh, absolutely. As a GH4 owner, when I first heard what the GH5 was going to have, it blew my mind. Just thinking of the possibilities that filmmakers could do with this much power in such a small body. And to kind of go back to the whole autofocus controversy, it's like I think people are losing sight of that. It's like these when they first announced it, I feel like everybody was in an uproar. It was like, oh my God, they're gonna have 10-bit 422 internally. They're gonna have waveforms. It's gonna shoot 6K photo. It's gonna have 6K anamorphic. Like all these big changes that nobody else has done or is even doing, at least that we know of yet. It was mind blowing to me, the possibilities of having a tool like that for such low cost. I mean, if you think about it, just 10 years ago, even if you wanted to have something that had that many features and that, that badass of a camera, you were looking upwards of $100,000 of fully rigged out like Panavision, Panaflex, to get that type of quality. But now the digital age has come so far in such a short time. I feel like the features that they're putting in cameras like the GH5 really only truly benefit all of us, and it's not just specifically for the higher end film market. It's now everybody has access to these amazing tools. So yeah, when it was first announced, I was pretty psyched about it. Were you stoked about it? What did you think?
Yeah, the initial announcement definitely had that feature shock for me, where it's like, whoa, they're doing, oh, okay. And like there had been rumors circulating beforehand, so I think a little bit of that was lost. Anytime you kind of, the beans get spilled beforehand, it takes away a little bit of the punch, but there was still stuff that was surprising and got me excited for the camera. The lack of increase in the image quality, like we were talking about before, like not really, yes, there's less of a crop, but the sensor size isn't really changing that much. And I didn't really expect it to, so I can't complain there, but like not a significant improvement in dynamic range that currently I can see. It is cleaner in the shadows, as we discussed. So a little bit more dynamic range, but not significant potentially. And then just like having that component of it, I think is maybe a little bit like has me down a little bit. But just talking with you, like I'm really glad we did this, because talking through all this stuff, like I came into this being like yeah, this piece of junk, it's all right, I guess. Like stabilization, whatever, 60 frames, whatever, waveforms, whatever, LUT monitoring, whatever, internal codec, whatever, like the image quality, but like it is really refreshing to have that excitement about a product that is really doing new stuff and doing interesting stuff in this form factor, like more professional codec, better color sampling, all those features really do matter. And it really strikes me like the GH4 was like an instant buy for me. Like having 4K, coming from my background, like telling you about like shooting with the 5D Mark II and then the Mark III, and like not even having 1080, right? And being so frustrated with like just this piss poor resolution, and then a camera that's like, it's got 4K. And yeah, it's probably not technically true 4K, because of compression and stuff.
Yeah.
But pretty close. Definitely higher resolution than 1080. Having that, and I pulled those files in for the first, like I bought the GH4 and I was like, this is the camera. Like I had the GH1, I skipped the GH2, recommended to a friend, but I didn't own it. I skipped the GH3. Panasonic's back. This is the GH4. I bought it. I loaded those files in, and seeing like 4 times the resolution of 1080. I was like, I had a Mark III right there, shot some footage side by side, and like pulled it into Premiere and was just like, holy cow, this is game changing. This is like going to make such a difference. And I remember that was even like, that was just 3 years ago, but people were like, why do you need 4K? You don't need 4K. 4K is a joke. That, you know, that was still in kind of that like airy Alexa era where it was like 1080 is enough, 2K is enough. You don't need. It's like, no, it is worth it. And now with the GH5, the stabilization, autofocus should be better, but like, so, you know, 60 frames a second, some of these features, I don't think it's quite as captivating for me because it's not such a universal change. And not saying that resolution is all that there is, because obviously there's a lot more that goes into an image than just the resolution. But resolution, from what we had, you know, from what we had with the DSLRs at that time and doing that step up, and Panasonic leading that charge, and then everyone else jumping on ship like, oh man, Panasonic's doing 4K. All right, we got to figure out how to do 4K. Oh shoot, our cameras are overheating. Oh crap, we don't, you know, like they led the way. And I think they're doing something similar with the GH5 where they're first to market with these kind of features and saying, yeah, we own this. Like you will like you will buy our stuff because we're committed to like giving you something that you actually want to buy, which seems so weird, which is like opposite of what I think Sony does. I think Sony does the bare minimum. From my perspective, they do the bare minimum to get you to buy the next thing. Hey, here's
Yeah.
the A7S II. It's a little bit better in low light and sensor stabilization and internal 4K. All right. Okay. Like those are nice features, but you got nothing else in your bag of tricks. You're not gonna do anything else. And like, and that's where I think Panasonic really shines, is on those little details. That guy at Panasonic who's like, I'm gonna put a waveform on this thing. I'm gonna do anamorphic. I'm gonna do, you know, it's like that side of the Lumix brand is really, really cool.
That guy's the man. And I think that's kind of what we were seeing with this recent article that got blown out of proportion, you know, about Panasonic. A lot of people were scared. They were jumping ship going, oh, I just pre-ordered the GH5 and I think I'm going to cancel my pre-order because Panasonic's going under. And it's like, no, Panasonic's not going under. They're consolidating their video market. They're taking the professional side, the amateur consumer side, and they're putting it all together so that they can work jointly together to give us the best product possible. I don't want to sit here and fanboy on this thing. I do want to play devil's advocate and say, I do kind of feel like the GH5 is a little bit like the GH3, in that, you know, it's not. I don't want to say it's a marginal increase from the GH4 because the features are definitely not marginal. The features are definitely big, but I don't think it's the first of its kind like the GH4 was. If we follow the Panasonic roadmap that was given to us when the GH5 was first announced, and I said this in one of my previous videos, and I want to keep reiterating it because I think people keep forgetting it, and I think it's the next evolution eventually. Panasonic claimed that for those of you that don't know, 2020, the Olympics are being shot in 8K. They will be delivered in 4K, broadcast, I believe, in 1080. I don't know if it's going to be broadcast in 4K, but I know that the recorded deliveries are being sent out in 4K. So at least they'll be 4K. But my point is that Panasonic said by 2020, we will have 8K in these, I'm assuming they meant these particular types of cameras. Now, I personally think the GH6 is going to be, we'll see, is going to be that jump and that whoa like the GH4 was. I don't think right now at this current state, at least the way it was shipped, that the GH5 is again whoa like the GH4 was. I think the GH4 was so groundbreaking because it had so many things that had never been done before. The GH5 has features that, like you said earlier with the A6500, have been done before. They've been done by other companies. Yes, no one has done 4K 60p in a small body like this. And yes, no one has done 10-bit 422 internal in a body like this. But those features have been around for at least almost a decade. There have been cameras, video cameras that can shoot for 422 10-bit, you know? So I don't know. At least for right now, um, I don't think the GH5 is as much of a landmark camera as the GH4 was.
Yeah, I would, if this makes sense, I don't know, tell me if it does or doesn't, but there was a GH1 and then there's a definite GH2. And then the GH3 was probably more like a GH2 Mark II, if that makes any sense. And then
The
we had
hacked GH2, when it got hacked, it was kind of like that.
yeah, and the GH3 I think had some other like minor features that kind of rounded it out so you didn't have to hack it, and it kind of, but it didn't really do much more over the GH2 other than just being like, oh, it's a Mark II version of it. It's like a GH2 essentially, but then we had the GH4, and now the GH5 seems more like a GH 4.5, not a GH4 Mark II necessarily. Like I think it is more of a step up. It's just not quite as much of a step up as maybe we could have hoped or wanted. And not that that's a bad thing. Obviously, like these companies are deliver products to make money. And so they're never going to just give us the world and be like, yeah, it's only $500. You know, they're going to charge more, offer features that they think are an equivalent value. And then it's up to the consumer to determine if it is if it is that value. It seems like you made the decision that, yes, I'm willing to give you $2,000 for those features. I just see that the Lumix brand and what they're doing, they seem more interested in actually offering valuable features than what some of the other companies are doing, where it's just like, how can we get them to buy it? How can we get them to buy the next thing? That's what we'll give them. And that's why I have such a grief with Canon and what they did with the Mark IV. Maybe they didn't optimize it enough. Maybe they held things back. I don't know what they're doing, but like they thought they could get away with that. And that's why they shipped the camera the way they did. And now that's why they're coming back and making amends and saying, oops, our bad. And that's why I think Sony, they released the A6300 and then like what, 6 months later, it's the A6500 and now it's got sensor stabilization,
You don't understand how mad I was when less than a year later they're announcing the next iteration of the camera. I was one of those people who bought the 6300 when it came out and then sold it less than what, 7 months, less than a year, 7 months after it came out, sold it, and then got the 6500. And it's like, if they were to say, in 6 months from now, hey, the 7000 is coming out, I would definitely put the brakes on and go, whoa, this I got to take a look at, because I'm set. You know what I mean? Like 6500, GH4, GH5, like I'm set. There's, at least for me, there is nothing else that I could possibly get in a camera right now that would make me go out and buy the next edition. Because with what I've got, I feel like I could pretty much do it all, with respect to the camera bodies themselves, what they are fully capable of doing. So, for me, it's like, if Sony does come, and somebody in the chat is saying, which camera should I buy for photos and videos? It's like, for me, if whatever Sony comes out with the next iteration, even if it smokes the GH5, blows it out of the water, I don't think I would buy it, and I don't think I would look at it as something that I would really want, because there has to be a point where, at least for me, there has to be a point where you've got to call it quits, and you've got to say, what I have works, and it works really, really well, and I don't need to get the next thing. Look at Simon Cade. I don't know if you follow his channel, DSLR. I think it's like DSLR Guide or something like that. He has not upgraded. He still uses the Canon T3i, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But he makes a very good point. And again, kind of going to what we were talking about, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but what we were talking about, as far as cameras being a huge upgrade, should you upgrade? Him using the same camera and being able to do what he can with that camera is just proof in the pudding that if you have something and it works for you and you're making it work, you really don't need to upgrade, no matter what the features are.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for using what you have and not always just buying into the new thing because it's the latest and greatest. But you also can't dismiss the fact that there are things that new cameras offer that are new and different, and like you couldn't necessarily do before on another piece of equipment. You might have to do it a little bit different. Maybe it's not as easy, or maybe it's literally impossible. It just depends on the feature. But thank you for the recommendation on Simon Cade. I've never he's got 500,000 subscribers, and I've never even heard of this guy.
Yeah, he's really cool. He's kind of like I don't want to say your average filmmaker, but because he's definitely not. He definitely goes above your average filmmaker in terms of his content on his YouTube channel. But it's like I look at him and I see somebody who may not have had the professional training that maybe you or I have or some other people have, and is not working professionally consistently like you or I. But it's like he is doing it. You know, he is making content. He is putting that camera to work, and he's getting it done. The dude has got 500,000 subs. You know what I mean? He's got to be doing something right. You know, and he doesn't have a GH4. He doesn't have a GH5. He doesn't have an A7S2 or an A7R2. He's got a Canon T3i and 500,000 subs. So, you know, he's doing something right. So anyone, again, that is considering upgrading, just take a look at that and say, wow, if he can do it, well, maybe so can I. You know, maybe I've got what it takes to do whatever I want to do and just get out there and actually shoot and do it.
Yeah, and that's why it's down to things far further away from like the camera. You know, it's all those other things of production that are usually much more important, and the camera is just maybe the icing on the cake, or the small the side treat that really isn't the front and center thing that's really making the product. I mean, when you're talking about filmmaking, plot, characters, you know, direction, budget definitely plays a factor in there. So there's as cool as a GH5 or an A7S Mark III or whatever Blackmagic is cooking up next, you know, like there's always going to be new things that are going to be better tools for us to do our jobs. But if you want the full package, you have to get the full package, not just the camera. So I really appreciate you coming on here and chatting with me. It's been really fun. I definitely enjoyed our conversation. I think, I don't know, is it weird to say that like I surprisingly enjoyed it?
No, it's all good. Thank you for having me.
Not that I was gonna say like, oh, like I was expecting it to be terrible, but like I really enjoyed this conversation. It was very rewarding for me internally. It felt good.
Good. I'm glad. Likewise. I think it's good that, you know, we openly discuss. I like something you said earlier too. I think it's good that we openly discuss not only just the benefits of these devices, but the shortcomings, because how are things ever going to get better? How are improvements ever going to get made if we don't, you know, show the shortcomings of these devices? I really like that. And again, I really appreciate you asking me to come on and talk on the channel. Thank you for everyone who's been on in the chat. Chat's going crazy right now. But yeah, thank you everyone who's been watching. Really appreciate it. And yeah, it has been fun. I was actually hesitant to come on because I've never done a joint live stream, but I'm really glad I did. And again, I really thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. One last thing that I think is related and I think is pretty cool is I think there's something starting. Like I'm sensing it this morning with Max and Photo Joseph, and maybe with me and you, and just kind of, you mentioned it before, the community that's being built. I think in the past, a lot of that has taken place in like forums and, you know, like DVX user and stuff. There have definitely been groups online, but I don't know that that's really happened to a significant extent on YouTube. There are other communities on YouTube and different groups, but I haven't necessarily seen that in the video production and filmmaking world. I don't know if maybe I'm just not plugged into the right places. I think I'm pretty much subscribed to everybody aside from this DSLR guide guy. But the more I think that we can do that, have these kind of conversations, really get community involvement, and not attacking or fighting one another, but being open to having the controversial discussions that like Max and Joseph are kind of like going back of like, I think this way, you think that way, let's figure it out. And talking through some of that stuff I think is really valuable, because then that feedback can always make it back to the manufacturer. they can hopefully provide better products, and we can all get better building each other up. That's part of the reason why I do the content I do, is just because I want other people to be able to look at my stuff and say, that guy sucks or that guy's good. Like they can look at what I'm doing, and no matter if they think it's good or they think it's bad, they can still learn from it and improve their own work.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Wonderful, man. Well, thank you. Hey, speaking of community, do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah, sure. At Sully Cortez on pretty much all my social media. SullyCortez.com. If you haven't been there, go ahead and go join up on the mailing list. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Sully Cortez. And yeah, you can find out all my work at my website and on my social media links.
Awesome. And then for anyone who's still watching, there still is that 10% off at Lens Rentals. You just use the promo code STRAWNS. Again, I don't get anything for this. I just think they're a really cool company, and I rent from them all the time. As I've rented this, paying $100 of my own money to get it. And yeah, you can get 10% off if you go to Lens Rentals and use my name as the promo code at discount. STRAWNS, type it in and you get 10% off. All right. We'll see you guys. Thanks, Sully.
Peace.